The current monetary system is ripping people off, is stealing your energy, your time, because you're putting your time and energy into a business, which is then essentially being eroded away by the government.
What is it that you know about Bitcoin that the average person doesn't understand?
Well, that's what it is. You can't just pack up all of your gold bars and your properties and your cash and say, I'm out of here, government. As long as you know your seed phrase, which is your password to access the Bitcoin, and they just walked out of the country, see you later.
You would be an absolute moron right now in this moment, 2025, leading to 2026, if you are not paying attention to the opportunities in front of you.
50 grand, how much would that be in 20 years? In a superannuation fund, it would be 233,000. Let's say they move that into Bitcoin and Bitcoin compounds. The base case scenario, 8.1 million. Bitcoin is a long-term asset. This is the only asset in history where you and me have had a chance to front run Wall Street, because Wall Street's only just got here.
Why would you say that it's still early?
He went from broke to building a $70 million e-commerce empire in Amazon. Then instead of doing what everyone else would do, he sold everything. His investment properties, his car collection, and his superannuation. He moved it all into Bitcoin. Today, Matthew Fraser is the founder of Crypto Collective, a private community of over 2,000 Australians learning how to build long-term wealth through Bitcoin, particularly inside SMSFs. He's become one of the loudest and clearest voices in Australia when it comes to financial sovereignty, decentralization, and what real freedom looks like in a world that's getting noisier by the day. But Matthew didn't start in crypto. His story begins in a struggle, from broke to Amazon, then to Bitcoin, and of course to his wealth, leading a movement that's helping everyday Aussies protect and multiply their wealth. He is a true freedom fighter. In this episode, we unpack the turning point that changed everything, how he built a $70 million Amazon machine, and why he believes money is good, and what freedom actually means to him. You're listening to the Freedom Formula podcast, where we decode the systems, the skills, the mindset behind the financial and lifestyle freedom you desire. I'm your host, Shane DaCosta. Matthew, welcome to the podcast.
Shane, thanks for having me here. Great to be here.
Mate, pleasure to have you on. But you literally were a hurricane on my feed. But prior to the show starting, you asked me, how is it that you came onto my radar? Well, you're doing what you're meant to do, mate. You're sharing value. So kudos to you first and foremost, because, sometimes when you get stuck in doom scrolling, and often, someone like myself, and I'm sure you do as well, when you're scrolling, you're actually looking for value, and you stood out. And what you stood out for immediately to me was you were sharing some real key insights. In particular, when I looked on your channel on YouTube, and there was a long form video there, you were sharing some key insights into what was happening with regard to Bitcoin at that particular time, and me now being what I would call a Bitcoin enthusiast.
He's orange pilled,
and yeah, like I'm orange pilled, right? Like I've been bitten by the bug in a sense, and I'm sort of going down that path, and obviously it stood out. So it's a pleasure to have you on here. So I want to dive in and let's explore, I guess, what it is that the listeners really need to understand about their Bitcoin, their financial freedom, and what they can do to set themselves up in the best way possible, given, I suppose, how things are changing globally and the opportunities that are available, of course, right? Because I think the paradigm has shifted.
Yeah, Shane, so much to unpack. How many hours have we got?
Well, we've got a little while.
Bitcoin.
We've got a little while. So I guess what is it that you know and believe about Bitcoin that the average person doesn't understand?
The fundamentals with Bitcoin, Shane, is that it is sound money. That's what it is. It's sound money. And everyone's going to say, what is sound money? It's something that cannot be printed at whim by a government and distributed into the world or into the economy, which then, of course, creates inflation and the devaluation of the currency. That's fundamentally it. There's a reason why, particularly after COVID, when people went to the grocery store and they're like, shit, I'm filling up my groceries, but it's like 5 times as much as what it used to be, right? And that's because the currency is being debased. Everything's going up in price, but you're not seeing that in your salary, for example. Your salary is not keeping up with inflation. And so the fundamental thing that people must do is, how do they allocate their work and their energy into, at the moment, it's a currency, but it's being debased. So what they can now do is move that energy into a store of value, which is what is quite often referred to with Bitcoin as a store of value, liken it to gold, like digital gold, and they can hold Bitcoin digitally so that they can retain their wealth into the future.
I love that idea of stored value. And it was that, I suppose, idea that initially caught my interest. You know, I'm quite new still, as many people are, right? It's still fascinating to think that so many people still, A, don't really understand it, and B, actually aren't participating yet. And so it was a surprise to me when I actually heard the idea that I'm not late to the game.
I think everyone's early still.
Yeah, the idea that you're still early, right? So that's the first thing to understand. But I guess we'll circle back to that.
Keep in mind, Shane, that people often think that because I'm sort of now become a voice of Bitcoin per se, and I'm not a small voice in the big sea of things, and I'm just trying to push a message of course, financial freedom and also a store of value. And because I've done some things in business and allocated to Bitcoin, I'm sharing what I've done. More importantly, though, I've moved all of my superannuation into an SMSF and allocated to Bitcoin, which we can talk about that later.
Yeah.
But that's the reason why I'm out there every single day, is because I want other Australians to also realize the opportunity that's there. Now, how many people? There's something like 6% of the whole world that even has Bitcoin. So you are right. When we talk about growth or adoption of an asset or an idea or a new monetary system, at 6%, we are extremely early. So it's great that you've joined the Bitcoin bandwagon.
I'm on the bus, mate. You know, there's an old saying, which is the best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago. And the next best time is today, right? Unfortunately, there is something which I was studying a bit this week. Actually, I was in my process of creating this course. I'm studying a lot of social biases. One of those biases that came up is the social bias of almost confirmation, and hence why, despite that there could be a lot of evidence to suggest that something is an opportunity, most people aren't early adopters. Most people are late adopters by definition. So we like things to be absolutely validated, and we love it to be exhausted and flogged before then we jump in and then we complain that, the opportunity is missed. But what got me on the hook in particular, as I was studying Bitcoin myself and listening to people like you and studying those that are advocates and sharing value into the world and trying to bring light to a subject, was the idea that, well, in fact, you're not late. It's still early. It's early days. The opportunity still exists. This is where it's going. This is why it's going there. And that's what actually got me on the bus. So for those listening that are still very new, why would you say that it's still early?
I guess just to touch on that first, Shane, I thought when I came in 2022 that I was late.
Interesting.
Okay. And just to frame this a bit, I came into the space having been in some of my tough times around the Gold Coast area as an Uber driver part-time to bring cash in.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I remember a guy getting into the car. It's probably 2017, 18. And he said the word Bitcoin. And I said, Bitcoin, that's a bloody scam. That's a big scam. You want to buy property. Yeah. That was my big thing.
It's the Australian sport.
Property was the thing, right?
Yeah.
And it's ingrained in our psyche,
Australian religion,
right?
Yeah.
And ever since I came out of high school, it's like property empire. That's it. That's for me. And of course, so I dismissed it. And then eventually, I was still hearing about it. So I bought in just after the highs of 2021. So it peaked up to about 69,000 US dollars, and then it was coming back down. And around that time, of course, it's called the time of euphoria, where everybody's talking about Bitcoin because it's reached all-time high. It's all over the news, and the taxi driver's talking about it, right?
Yeah.
And so I came in around that time, and I remember buying. I think my first purchase was around the $60,000 mark, and as soon as I bought, it went down. And I bought again and it went down.
Same thing just happened to me.
But you got to keep buying, Shane.
Yeah,
you got to keep buying. And so for some reason, I think it's because I was also getting trained by a crypto coach at the time.
Right.
My conviction levels were very, very high. And I guess whatever they were saying to me was probably buy more. So I'm talking hundreds of thousands of dollars I'm putting in it at this stage. I get to the bottom of the market and it went down to about 16,000 US dollars.
Oh, wow.
I'm now in the red in the tune of over $500,000. So I'm a newcomer to the space. I'm now in red $500,000 and I don't blink. Right? Wow. I don't blink. I keep buying. keep buying. And Shane, there were people who were around me at the time who said to me, don't buy now. It could go down to 10, right? So they were waiting. And this is the big mistake that people make. No, it's going to go down more. We're going to wait. They sit on the sidelines. They don't want to pull the trigger. I just kept buying all through the bomb. So I was buying it at $16,000 mark. It could have gone down to 10, Shane.
Yeah.
It could have, there was even talk of $3,000. But you know what? I would have just kept buying because also I had an operational business that at the time was churning out millions of dollars in cash. So I had the liquid cash to do that.
The liquid cash to do that and to support yourself. But there was fundamentally a belief that allowed you to persevere and stay as cool as a cucumber through that moment, right? Because otherwise you wouldn't be. What did you believe?
I would have sold, Shane. I would have done what most people do now, which is it's going down. Oh, that's it. We've heard on the news it's going to zero. I'm just going to have to wear the 500,000 plus loss and just be done with it and move on with my life and just sort of chalk that up to an experience.
Now, people would do that if fundamentally the source of truth is coming from the wrong place, right? The source of truth meaning the general media talking about things that probably they don't even yet understand. So you had a different source of truth, which were people that were deeply ingrained in Bitcoin, in the movement, in the understanding of
and had been for years.
And had been for years. So there was something that you believed in that moment that allowed you to stay on course. So what did you believe? How would you explain what you believed?
It's hard to put my mindset back to where I was there because your mindset grows so quickly in the Bitcoin space. But whatever, I would say this though, that I've experienced a lot of success by investing in myself. You will be big in this as well,
Personal
Shane.
development.
For sure, right?
It's your greatest asset. I mean, we're talking here about an asset class, right? Being Bitcoin. We can talk about gold. We can talk about all kinds of things. But I'm still of the opinion that your greatest asset, in particular, if you don't have a lot of money, I just heard a statement yesterday, which I thought was interesting, which was actually a Hormozi quote where someone asked him, what should I invest in? And this guy only had like $10,000 or something. He said, if you've got less than $10,000 to your name, the only thing you should be investing in, I think actually was $100,000. So if you've got less than $100,000 to your name, the only thing you should be investing in is you.
It's perfect. And he's right.
Yeah.
Backtrack for a second, Shane.
Yeah.
We skipped over this bit. I invested probably in the tune of $50,000 in personal development when it came to the Amazon space. Yeah, I got a mentor.
Just learning about the business, learning about the opportunities.
I got a mentor, how to find products, all that sort of stuff, right? That then led on to that particular business, which did about 70 million Australian dollars in sales.
What were you selling?
A medical product.
Yeah, wow.
And so you're in the health space?
Yeah, I'm in the health space as well, yeah.
So, I mean, so what I learned through that process though, was my first two products failed. Okay. They went down the toilet.
As they do.
That was money down the toilet.
Yeah.
But it was an investment in my education of how to sell products.
I was about to say the big but. Yeah.
Yeah. Online.
Yeah.
Okay. And it became a global business. Now, this thing that I skipped, because people are going to go like, fuck, how did you do that? The thing that I skipped that most people don't is I did the training and it was, hey, go find a product in China, brand it, sell it. That was basically it. I did that twice. It failed. I then knew there's got to be something else to this. Then I basically in the short version, found an existing product that wasn't being marketed, teamed up with the manufacturer. I signed an exclusive deal to buy the stock from him wholesale, sell it globally. And then that was it. That was literally it. I didn't design the product, manufacture product.
Manufacture it.
No branding, no patents, no trademarks. I just picked up the product and then sold it. I mean, it's freaking crazy, right? Because everyone else is struggling to find the widget
ideating
in
and
China.
Colors and this and that and materials and fabrics or whatever it is, right?
And this was a product though that helped people breathe. So it wasn't like a new t-shirt. Okay. It was like, this is saving lives, right?
Yeah, wow. Okay.
So people are going to put money in that.
Big problem, solving it.
Right. Without drugs, no chemicals, no solutions, just pure physics with this particular device. Manufactured, not joking, a block from here. A block from the studio.
That is crazy.
So I sell this all through the world eventually. Amazon, Shopify, started off with the ClickFunnels as well before I did Shopify. So I've been down that path. I don't have what you've got, Shane. You've got some monumental awards. And
I've got another one coming, by the way. It's the exact same one. So
I've got one record on it.
But here's the thing, right? Like I've learned that in fact, the hardest one to get is the first one, which would be the first $1 million. That is the hardest one of all.
Okay.
And the one that most entrepreneurs are proud of
is the first, and this is from my perspective, it's the one that validates the idea. It's the one that validates all your hard work, your effort. And so getting to 10 million or 25 million US, for example, to me wasn't as big as a celebration as the first sale.
Well, would you say though that
the first sale, I ran out of my office and I was high-fiving my wife, the first sale.
Oh, that's the best bit.
Yeah.
Right? Because you've now validated that someone's willing to pay for this product.
To me, that's a bigger win, the plaque that you don't see, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you've learned a lot through that process with ecom.
And so the point I was making, Shane, which I digress to, with the fact that I spent money on my own education, 70 million.
Yeah.
I then went, there's something to this.
Yeah.
So rather than me
direct return, basically.
Yeah. Well, rather than me just going balls deep, as you say, into crypto, I'm like, I need to find a crypto coach.
Okay.
I want to learn from someone who's done this already. And I'm going to give the audience
that's called wisdom.
A story. Okay. Yeah. At the time, my best mate from high school was also in the crypto space. And he's like, I've got my money on this staking platform. I'm getting 78% return to these shit coins, basically.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? And I'm like, I'm actually spending 20 grand on investing in myself to learn the space. And I think maybe you should do that too. Nah, fuck that. I know all there is to know, Well, what happened was he lost all of his money because he invested all of his money into this platform that ultimately didn't tick the boxes of security. Maybe he didn't diversify his investments. It was all in one platform, all of it staked, got too greedy. That collapsed in under Celsius and he lost his life savings of $70,000. So I always tell people, and you'll back me up on this, Shane, invest in yourself first. Because people don't know what they don't know.
Until
and
they know.
Usually what they don't know is they're going to lose a fuck ton of money.
Blissful ignorance.
So therefore, because I spend all this money now on investing myself for crypto education, I've now gone on to do quite well in the crypto space. I didn't make the same mistakes that my friend made.
I think that's the important part, right? And even I look at anything I've done in life. I mean, the catalyst was always awareness, like building awareness in gaps. So the coaching mentorship aspect of our journey is, I would say, the most important part of all. Like being able to lean into experience, I call that wisdom. Obviously, the opposite of that is consequence. And there's always two teachers in life, as I learned very early in my days. You know, there's two teachers, whether you like it or not. There's going to be wisdom or there's going to be consequence. So you learned very early on, and you saw the power of self-education, personal development, coaching, mentorship, and fundamentally, what you were leaning into there was shrinking time. You recognize that if you learn from someone that's already done it, then you were going to limit your mistakes. You were going to hedge basically your bets, so to speak, because you've got the advantage of being able to lean into the stupid tax someone else has paid, right?
Yeah.
And so you can, when I say stupid tax, I mean like errors, mistakes. Sometimes people misunderstand that for tax. No, I mean like stupid tax, right?
Yeah. And
mistakes.
we've all done a stupid tax.
Yeah, well, I've paid plenty of stupid tax in my time. Even this year, I've had a whole bunch of it. But every one of those things is a lesson, right? So you're learning a bunch of lessons. What I love there is an example of we should never, because if freedom is the goal, we talked about before we got on camera, the ultimate goal is freedom. Freedom being autonomy. And autonomy, what that looks like is more time or more money, which gives you more time, more choice to do what you want, with whom you want, whenever you want.
Let me share something here, Shane.
Yeah.
This is now going deep.
Ooh, I love it. Let's go.
This is going super deep. You touched on it having the choices. Okay. When the vax mandates rolled around and everyone was like, hey, you've got to go and get it, I was in a position that I didn't have to do shit.
Yeah, wow.
Okay. And I basically gave the middle finger to the government and all the experts and said, sorry. Other people, unfortunately, were not in that position, including some of my siblings and what have you, right?
Yep.
Because the government had control over their wage. And that's like a lot of Australians, they didn't really want to go and get it. They ultimately bowed down to it because the threat of we're going to pull away your salary and the food off your table and your children's future. And they went, oh, fuck, I better go and do it. So that's just one example of what I would call a level of maybe that people say it's medical freedom. But in order to have that, ideally, if you don't want to be put out on the street because you've got a mortgage to pay, is you've got to have the money. And so we just happened to be through the blessings that we were in a position and look, we actually thought, because I also own a Hungry Jack's restaurant. I'm not sure if you know that.
No.
Oh, there you go. Hungry Jack. Still have that. And there's a whole other story.
Maybe a lot of your clients are my clients.
Maybe, yeah. With the health
Because we're getting healthy. Yeah.
But, we made a decision, my wife and I at the time, when everything was shutting down, we said, you know what, we will not make our staff, we're not going to push that to our staff. Mm-hmm. Right. That was the decision that we made. And we made also the decision that we will close the store and just, that's it. We're not going to force this upon other people. Right. That's the decision that we made. Ultimately, what ended up happening was totally nuts, because the powers that be got together and said, you know what we're going to do? Yeah. We are going to keep all the fast food restaurants open.
Yeah.
Right. And we're going to shut down all the health food stores, the gyms, right? All they're closed, restaurants closed, bars closed, right? It was total disgrace because I know that so many people suffered greatly financially because they ruined lives.
And the repercussions of that, the ripple effect of that is what we're feeling.
But what it did though, Shane, is it opened up my eyes big time, because I will admit, up until that time, I kind of thought that government was kind of does the right thing for the most part. I thought, it looks after the people. That was a massive wake-up call to me. I was like, holy shit, this is serious.
Never seen before. Yeah.
Never seen before. It was so obviously one big con. And so that's it. So that also helped me move away to, hey, let's study this Bitcoin thing, because I'm now not trusting in what the government's saying, So when, they don't tell you about the debasement of the currency, do they? It's not on the 6 o'clock news.
It's not something, I guess, that is spoken about in the way that you start to hear it when you start to research and understand about Bitcoin, and you start to be aware of what's going on with the fiat system and how it is effectively like you're losing every single day. The harder you work does not mean you're advancing. You're lucky if you're standing still for most Australians these days, right? You're lucky.
It's so hard to get because your salary's not keeping up with inflation. Now, the question of the government is, why do we even have inflation? Why? No one can answer that question. Right? It just is.
It just is.
It's just an is thing. Yeah. Things just go up in value, in price all the time.
There was your journey through e-com. And there's an incredible story there. I mean, $70 million. At some point then you transition and you've taken the lessons and then you go further and further down this path of Bitcoin now. And so you arrive kind of where you are today, which you're heavily helping people, particularly obviously Australians, with taking their money out of, I suppose, how would you describe it?
A corrupt superannuation system.
I was trying to find a way to describe it. Like, so a way to manage their future with, superannuation and so forth, and you're turning it now into an opportunity where they can actually create with more control and create true leverage with their SMSF and so forth.
The misnomer that's out there, Shane, is that an SMSF is difficult. Right, that is the misnomer out there, and everyone listening to this who doesn't have an SMSF will be thinking, "Oh, I don't want to do that. It sounds really hard, difficult to set up, and also I don't have that much money in super, so I can't really go set up an SMSF." Right, because the other misnomer out there, which is perpetrated by accountants and financial advisors, which is that you've got to have this minimum magical number of like $200,000+ in your superannuation before you can transition or roll it over to an SMSF. Okay. And the reason why they say that is, the fees are too much. There's so many fees in the SMSF, and therefore you'll erode away your returns in your SMSF.
In the transfer.
Well, just the fact that you're going from a super
into an SMSF,
and you have fees. So therefore it's just not worth it.
Yep.
Okay. That's rubbish. Now that is because it's based on the traditional investments. So yes, if you move from a super where you're just investing in stocks and shares to SMSF and you're just investing in the same shit, the fees are going to eat away your returns, because the returns in super are really 7%, 8%, maybe 9% on average per year. Right? Now people are going to think, yeah, but isn't that good? No, it's shit.
No, it's rubbish.
You've been trained to think it's good. Okay. And so they talk about, there's a thing called the hurdle rate, right? Which is basically like what you've really got to achieve to be decent, to get above a hurdle rate. Yeah. Otherwise it's really going backwards, right? So it's like the minimum you must be achieving in the market.
Minimum threshold. Yeah.
And the only thing now, sometimes there's some outliers. I would agree, maybe NVIDIA and maybe in the future Tesla, things like that. Over the past 15 years, the outlier has been Bitcoin, right? So the last 5 years, Bitcoin's gone up 400% in the last 5 years. It does an average CAGR compounding annual growth rate of over 50% for the last 5 years.
Compared to?
Pardon me?
Compared to 7%.
7-8% in super, right? It's not even a comparison.
Not even close.
If you move from superannuation to an SMSF, allocate to Bitcoin, the fees become irrelevant. Yeah, maybe you spend $2,000-$3,000 a year in fees. That's nothing.
It's nothing compared
right?
to what it's
Gonna
growing.
They wouldn't even factor that in. And so the reason why now people are waking up to this fact that they can set up an SMSF. In fact, the ATO just put out a report the other day. There's more people now opening up an SMSF than ever before. So people are slow waking up to the fact that they can easily do this. And then, of course, the growth now is in Bitcoin, right?
What are the risks then for those that kind of reject this idea and are too scared? As we talked about earlier, there's early adopters, there's late adopters, and most people like to play it extremely safe. We like to play in the middle, to do what's always been done. And so doing anything different, it alarms the reptilian brain, which we're so fearful of all kinds of things, particularly Australians are so skeptical. Why would you say then why is it a bad idea to follow the yellow brick road, to do the status quo versus thinking about things from a different angle and exploring alternative ways to build future wealth?
The first thing you have to think about is that Bitcoin is a long-term asset. It is not something that we buy today and then hopefully in a year's time it's like 10x'd. That's not Bitcoin. Yes, it's had great growth, but it also is considered volatile. Now, that will be something that your financial advisor say, don't buy Bitcoin, it's volatile, okay? Yeah, it's volatile to the downside and it's also volatile to the upside. They leave that bit out, okay? So yes, but what we've seen though over the past sort of 10, 15 years is, and particularly even in recent time, is that the drawdowns, and we talked about a drawdown earlier on, is they're getting less. Okay, so less volatility. So let's say in the past there've been 80% drawdown, so from a high minus 80%, and then now it's like the most recent drawdown is 30%, right? And so we expect that over time it'll reduce down to 20%. Okay, as the asset matures and there's more liquidity in the market. Okay, and the other thing to consider: governments, institutions, and companies are now become the dominant buyers of Bitcoin, not the retail investors, which is people like you and me. So this is the only asset in history where the you and me have had a chance to front run
to get in
Wall Street. Yeah, because Wall Street's only just got here. We've had 15 years leading up to this where the average punter can actually invest into this asset. That's why there's so many billionaires now, let's call it even multimillionaires, who allocated to Bitcoin early and held on, right? And so for a long time, it's been dismissed. Even though I said in my opening discussion was about me as the Uber driver dismissing Bitcoin as a scam, because that's what was being spoken about by the big banks, the media, etc., who don't want you to know about this. So it's sort of like this thing where if the media says it's bad, it must be good. Yeah, that's basically it. So people have an opportunity right now to invest into this asset.
And I suppose so then with those considering dipping their toe in, and I recall when I was sort of in that position and exploring, okay, well, how do I approach this? What would be a sensible way in order to be able to start? Because SMSF is a fairly, well, I would call it almost a little bit of a big leap of faith. If you've got, the average Australian has what, about 150,000?
Oh, look, if you're in your 40s, you've probably got in the vicinity of probably 200,000.
200,000, right? So that would be a big decision. It's a good.
Yeah. Okay, but here's something to think about. First of all, you don't even have to move all of your super into an SMSF. People are like, oh, I really didn't know that.
So you can portion it.
You could keep your existing superannuation fund with REST, for example.
You were talking about CBUS before?
Yeah, if you want, as a hedge. And say, look, let's say you got 200. I just want to allocate $100,000 to Bitcoin. Leave your existing superannuation fund, leave 100 in there. Set up your SMSF and then move over 100 into your SMSF. And then you simply buy Bitcoin. The process is actually pretty simple. In fact, even in my online community, I map out a step-by-step guide of how to do it. It is actually simple. It's made complicated by the media, by the accountants and financial advisors, right? And so what they can do, Shane, is they can say, okay, well, look, I don't feel like and let's change it. They leave $150,000 in their superannuation. Let me tell you, Shane, this is going to blow people away. Now, do not switch off now, because I'm going to tell people how much it could possibly be in in 20 years time, right? So let's say they've allocated, let's just start with $50,000. Let's start let's say it was 8% that they had in their super fund over 20 years. And let's pretend, Shane, they didn't put a single cent in.
Yep. So just put that money in.
Just 50 grand. How much would that be in 20 years? In a superannuation fund, it would be 233,000. Okay. Now, let's say they move that into Bitcoin and Bitcoin compounds. The base case scenario, based on a range of people, right? But without going into detail, 29%, 8.1 million.
Huge difference.
That's just so for people who are watching this, $50,000, 29% over 20 years. So you're 40, you're now going to be 60, you're going to have 8.1 million. Now, maybe you had that other 150,000 sitting in super. Well, it's probably going to be in the vicinity of, I don't know.
So you leave 150, it turns into 200.
Well, 150, no, that was just 50, Shane.
That was 50. Yeah. So that's what I was trying to compare. So we're talking about like a case where you portion an aspect of your super. We said if hypothetically you had 200, you leave 150 because you're trying to play cautious. That 150 over the next 20 years
is going to get to about 700 grand.
It gets to about 700. Let's call it that, right? Yeah. And that's kind of looking at it from today's value because obviously there is inflation. So let's look at it from today's value. However, if you move just 50,000 as opposed to the 150, just 50.
Just 50.
And you allow it to do its thing in Bitcoin, you leave it alone, you let it mature, then based on, you said base rate and being conservative around base case being a mean of what people predict in terms of growth. And
it's a base, Shane.
Base, right?
29%, 8.1 million.
Let's
blow people away though.
Yes.
And say, Matt, it's done over 50% for the last 5 years, CAGR, right?
Yeah.
I expect it to be at probably more.
I've heard some crazy numbers.
50%. Let's not even say 50. Let's be generous and say 40%, right?
Yeah.
We are now talking 41 million.
So 41 million
from 50 grand.
From 50 grand as opposed to
fuck all. Basically.
That you get if you keep it in your SMSF and you let it suck ass for the next 20 years.
And people don't have to do anything.
Yeah.
They buy it and they do nothing. Okay. And it might do this, might go ups and downs. Okay. But it's actually doing this. It's doing this.
Again, to circle back to it, and I know it's such a simplistic question to ask, but inevitably there will be people listening to this that are still trying to understand, I guess, okay, so where does the value come with regard then to Bitcoin? I understand, for example, how you mentioned earlier that the Australian government, if it wants to, can just print more money. The American government does it all the time. And so do governments all around the world, which devalues the dollar. So that dollar sitting in your pocket as we're sitting here is eroding.
It's like before where you said that millionaires aren't really, it's not like the 90s millionaires. If you've got $1 million house now, who cares?
It's no big deal.
The average house is $1 million.
You go to a shit suburb in Sydney and you are paying much more than $1 million to live in something that needs to be knocked down.
Be kind of rich, okay, you got to have a $10 million house.
A decamillionaire. And I was saying to you as we were starting the show, which only yesterday, driving to Sydney, and I'm listening to Grant Cardone and he had this masterclass and just tearing to bits the idea of the middle class and how the middle class was different when he was growing up and what it meant, what it represented. Now, I mean, the divide is growing, and he was ripping into the idea, but just really to shake the foundations of the listeners, the people, to say, like, do not sit on your hands. If you sit on your hands, well, this is where it goes. And the idea really was pretty simple. To be considered rich once upon a time, we used to talk about, I want to be a millionaire, and having $1 million represented something. Whereas he was saying, well, now the equivalent is being a decamillionaire. In other words, you have to have $10 million cash to have the same prestige or elitism as what it was back then. So if you don't have $10 million cash from his perspective, well, then you aren't a millionaire.
Yeah.
You are at the bottom of the middle class.
Yeah.
And the divide's getting larger. So we have the ability now, I mean, more than ever, as you touched on, there's this asset that once upon a time, like you and I would never had an opportunity to get involved in, but it's right there. But because it's right there, it's so hard to believe for most people.
That's where the education comes in.
That's where that comes in.
Now, let me tell people a story because for most people, like myself, I have a wife. So if you're watching this podcast.
Is she on board?
Totally on board.
Did that take a while?
It did. And this is the point I'm going to make, right? Shane, you've just discovered Bitcoin. You go to your wife.
Super excited.
Baby.
Yes.
We're going to move all our super into Bitcoin
now. Let's sell it all. We're fucking selling it all.
I met this guy today called Matt. He sold his car collection. He sold his properties. He's in. He's all in. Okay. He knows something.
Yeah.
no one watching this today is going to be like, oh, I saw Matthew Fraser, so therefore I'm going to do X, right?
Yeah.
But what I encourage people to do is to go and do their own research, right? Go and read the books. Go
deep
right?
yourself.
And you'll go on your own journey of self-discovery. And the thing I love about Bitcoin is it's always evolving in the space, and you will change as a person. I never thought ever, and I'll tell you, when the guy who I was getting coached by in the crypto space told me that he had moved his super into Bitcoin, I remember going to my wife and I was like, look, babe, I know we're buying Bitcoin, but this guy's nuts. This guy's crazy. He's moved all his super into Bitcoin. So even at that point, I wasn't like, oh, let's just move it all in. It wasn't until later, as you go further down the rabbit hole of understanding why Bitcoin is so important to the world, to the human race, that then you're like, oh, there's a point where the penny just drops. And then you go, oh, now I get it. And then you're like, okay, now we're moving all in. But Shane, you go to your wife. You've had the education. You've spoken to me directly, and you've read the books, and you've done all the things.
I've got another book,
and other experts.
And I've got another book that I'm going to read.
Another book, which I just given you, Bitcoin 1 million.
Bitcoin 1 million.
And so my point to the folks watching is that they need to bring their other half along the journey too, right? Otherwise, you're going to get to the point where you're all in. Hey, baby, we're going to move our super into Bitcoin. She's going to be like, or he, whichever, is going to be like, we're not going to do that.
No, we are not. Yeah.
So you've got to start small, right? And then you buy, and then eventually, and you watch the shows together, and hopefully that works for you, because otherwise it will come to a stop. Okay, I see it all the time.
I guess, when you sort of look at it, and I read, the first book I read was The Bitcoin Standard. In fact, I do need to circle back to it. But what you learn through there is that there's evidence showing how, as humans, we've had these evolving currencies. There's always been a change. And this is just another one of those moments, and all the signs are there. And it's not like we can't see the evidence. We can't see it happening. What I want to touch on is what fascinates me most about Bitcoin, as you say, start to go down the rabbit hole, right? And I start to consume content of people like yourself, Adam Hudson, that people in Australia that we know, and then we start to look at people on the outside, and we start to sort of go through that process, is it becomes pretty clear that there's something else behind it. What I mean by that, there's a worldview. How would you describe what's behind it, the movement? You talked before about, what was the way you described
Sovereignty?
The sovereignty, yeah, but you described something about, you mentioned the color, the orange.
Orange pilled.
Orange pill. So in other words,
right, which is the term that's quite often used in Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Because Bitcoin uses the orange color.
But there's a belief system, right? Because it's deeper. What really got me intrigued about Bitcoin in particular, because there are many coins. Right. And they're largely referred to as shit coins, right? From a very layman term perspective. And I did see a friend, by the way, that at one stage held $16.5 million in his portfolio with all these shit coins. And it virtually
went to zero.
He caught it just before, but he lost a huge amount of it. So I've seen what happens with shit coins. But I know now, I guess, from my research, why Bitcoin. But before we touch on why Bitcoin versus other coins in particular, how would you describe what's behind this movement?
We love the title of your show and your
The Freedom Formula.
The Freedom Formula.
Yeah.
Okay. And people are going to say, well, how is Bitcoin related to freedom? And the reason why Bitcoin is related to freedom is because it's fundamentally decentralized. Okay. So no government, nation state,
can control it.
CEO, director controls it now. It's run by a network of computers, of nodes across the world that verify the transactions. So
uncorruptible.
It hasn't been corrupted yet. It's completely uncorruptible. You cannot seize it, right? So right now we're talking about governments right now. They can come and take your property. They can obviously close your bank. We've heard lots of stories right now about bank accounts being like literally frozen. And so we don't want to live in that world. And so it is a peer-to-peer digital commodity. Okay, I can send Bitcoin to you. You can send it to me. There's no middleman. So there's no bank in the middle saying, oh, no, you can't send that. Or why are you sending it to Shane for?
Why are you sending that? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we need to do some background checks on that guy. He looks suspicious.
Why are you pulling money out? He looks suspicious. Yeah.
Right. So people don't want that.
Yeah.
So there's different levels of freedom. And so this is monetary freedom. Now, if you want to move, this is the other thing that people don't know yet. If you're new to the space, if you want to move to, let's say, Dubai, this is a country that I'm considering moving to. You can't just pack up all of your gold bars and your properties and your cash and just put it in a suitcase and say, "I'm out of here, government. See you later." Right? You cannot literally get it through the border. Okay?
So you don't really own it by definition.
Technically, not.
By definition,
Bitcoin,
you are borrowing it.
Well, they're not. You can't even get it out.
Can't get it out.
Right. So you've got lack of freedom of where you want to take your wealth.
It's crazy, right?
Okay.
When you're getting off a plane, they ask you how much do you have on you?
You're like, oh, I don't know, like
Yeah, I don't know.
$100.
Yeah.
Here you are. You're lined up with like Rolexes all up your arm, aren't you?
Why have you got those? Yeah.
So the thing with Bitcoin though is that you can just, as long as you know your seed phrase, which is your password to access the Bitcoin, and for simple terms, let's say you can put it on a USB stick and I can walk into a whole other country, no problem. I could have $6 quadrillion worth of Bitcoin on that USB stick.
It's a big number.
Yeah. 6 quadrillion. It's a new one.
It's a new one.
Or for the common person, they might have $2 million.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they just walked out of the country, see you later. Right. So that is financial freedom right there. And so that's just one aspect of it, Shane.
So it's the sovereignty. It's the ability to move as you wish, do as you wish.
We don't think about it in Australia because we're the lucky country.
Yeah.
Okay.
Whoa.
And we don't have, I guess, inflation like they do in other countries where the currency is being debased
at much faster
by
rates.
like thousands of percent,
much faster
right?
rates.
Where they're walking around in like, I forget the country, Ethiopia or someplace, in like wheelbarrows.
Yeah,
right.
to buy a loaf of bread.
It's actually better.
It's trash.
Yeah, it's actually better as firewood. Yeah,
just burn it and keep yourself warm.
So because we're the frog in the boiling water. It's slowly getting bad, but we sort of just put up with it. And so we don't have a rush to safety of an asset, which is Bitcoin, as opposed to other countries who do. El Salvador actually is one of the country who mines its own Bitcoin. It's one of the currencies of El Salvador. And
they've adopted it.
Yeah, they've adopted it. And politicians and bureaucrats, so government workers, they get paid in Bitcoin. This is going to be like revelation for people watching this. Like, what the hell? Really? People get paid in Bitcoin in other countries? Yes. And so the thing about Bitcoin is it's global. It's not like just Australia-centric or USA-centric. It's a global monetary system. And people say, if it's a monetary system, but you said it was a store of value. Yeah, it's actually, this is what it's so hard for people to get their head around. It's all those things.
Yeah.
It is a monetary system. It is a store of value, right? It's a form of energy because energy is required to create the Bitcoin. You can't just press a button and then voila, there's a new Bitcoin. It takes time and energy of people to invest money of these mining machines to produce the Bitcoin is the very short version.
To actually produce it. And so one of the things, that I'm finding so fascinating at the moment, it's like everyone I know is leaving Australia. And it kind of goes back to what we were just talking about in terms of what's behind it, a movement. And it's kind of like the world's woken up. And as we spoke about, COVID was such a catalyst in so many ways. And I think so many people woke up in that moment through that disruption, through that chaos to some things they're no longer okay with, right? And one of those things was complete control and someone just putting a gauntlet down saying, this is how it's going to go. And I'm seeing all these people now choose where they live, choose how they work, choose how they earn, choose in what currency they earn, in what asset class they're building their wealth, how they travel, how they spend their time, and so it's just what's behind this movement. What I'm loving is this type of human energy. Because we talked about energy. We talked about, that Bitcoin requires like energy to produce it and so forth. But what's behind it seems to be this energy. And everyone that I speak to that's truly gone down that rabbit hole has a particular energy for the most part, where there's this pursuit of truth. There's this pursuit of sovereignty, of empowerment, value exchange. Would you agree?
I think Australians just don't want to get ripped off.
I don't think anyone, there's no one that wants to be ripped off. I think,
and that's what's happening under the current system. Yeah, the current monetary system is ripping people off. It's stealing money, stealing your energy, your time, because you're putting your time and energy into a business that's creating
a job, a career,
dollars, which is then essentially being eroded away by the government. Now, not just through taxes, which in Australia are horrendous.
They're shocking.
It's terrible. That's another reason why people are obviously moving away, right? The taxes in this country are outrageous.
It's unsustainable. I mean, I understand the idea of contribution. I understand the idea of having to, from my layman's terms, to be able to contribute. But when you consider the portion by which where we have to, like it's if you're okay with that, then like you deserve everything you fucking get. Like if you're okay with that, like if you're listening to this podcast and you're okay with paying 47% and whatever else, then you deserve.
It's always the people though who don't have money.
Yeah, and that's kind of what it's.
Because they're looking at you like, yeah, but you're a multimillionaire, so you should pay more. Yeah.
But that fundamentally is the problem. And I think that's one of the major issues in Australia is that we don't recognize actually how hard it is to add value into this world, to build something like you did, an e-com store, to get going out and do that, put your time and energy behind something to actually get it successful, what that should mean for you. Because you're out there doing this, which is fueling the economy. It's putting the gas behind it. So then to say, well, then you should be paying more than anyone else. Like, well, not more than anyone else. You should just pay what everyone else pays by a percentile.
Yeah.
Right?
Shane, Australian business owners, entrepreneurs in this country, they do all the heavy lifting. Yeah. Right? They put in all the risk.
All the risk.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the government puts in no risk.
But takes it all.
And then when you make a dollar, eventually, after probably years and years, then they come in and say, yeah, we're going to take that. Now, President Bukele, who's the president of El Salvador. Sorry, I keep saying El Salvador. I think I even said El Salvador earlier. It's not El Salvador. What's the country? He's
is it
the name escapes me. I'll come back to me. He says that the taxes are not actually real. That the taxes are actually fugazi.
Yeah. I've heard it being called a Ponzi scheme.
Well, they don't actually need to do taxes. It's the reason is because they do it to give you the idea that you're contributing. But in fact, why do they need to do taxes when they can print the money?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, there you go.
No one knows, but he got up on stage and said this. Yeah. So anyway.
It's interesting. And I think just to touch on that a little bit more, and it seems like we're naturally being pulled in this direction. What I find insulting is not only do then we pay, for example, that amount on what we earn, and because and why this came up, just to circle back, we were talking about, our time on this earth is limited, it's finite. And so we work, we toil, we go out there to attract wealth into our life for it to then obviously be stored in a way that as soon as we receive it is losing its value. The things that we have to buy are going up in value. And so there's this counter force happening, which is we're working harder, getting less, and then when we do get it, it's actually losing its stored value. And so we're fighting a battle we cannot win. Then what I find offensive is, let's say you do extremely well, you want to buy a home. Well, then you get slapped with your stamp duty. Then you want to go and buy a decent car. It's not even luxury. Let's just call it a car. You get slapped with a luxury car tax. Then you go, and so it's this idea, and going back to the movement, the idea is almost like a big fuck you, in a sense where this coin was created to align people to, I guess, a way of living, going about things, because you talked about like decentralized, you talked about the fact that it's basically uncorruptible. Like they can't come in and seize it and take it away from you. And I think the idea, if that alone doesn't fire you up to want to get involved, then nothing will. Like that alone. Take away what we talked about, the base, not the
base rate.
The base rate being 29.
With the base growth rate.
The base growth rate being 29%, but it has been about, in terms of what that's been in the last 8 years, about 50%. So if that alone doesn't fire you up to get involved, to do your research, to go get coaching, mentorship, to explore this, then nothing will.
You, at the very least,
at the very least,
just go and do some research. That's it. And I was right. It is El Salvador. So yeah, you're right. Getting the research done is so important, because there's an opportunity right now. I believe we're on the precipice of massive growth over the next 20 years. And the reason why I say that is through what basically adoption. Okay. Everybody's starting to wake up now and realize, shit, this is an asset that we want to hold. We want to get out of the shit system. And I don't know, Shane. I think there's a lot of talk that in the future, maybe 15 years, that Bitcoin will be the only monetary system. People will barter with Bitcoin. They will trade goods and services for Bitcoin, okay? Now, I don't know if that's ever going to happen. I can see a future, though, where Bitcoin replaces gold as a strategic reserve. The US president is already talking about, well, he's already put the law in place to actually do it. That hasn't actually come to fruition yet, which is they're going to create a strategic reserve for the US government, federal government. Now, states in the US, guess what? They've already started to do that.
Yeah, wow.
They've already passed laws. I think Texas the other day, they've done it through a slightly different means though, where they're allocating through to an ETF, which is an exchange traded fund. So essentially they own shares of the Bitcoin, okay? Digital shares of the Bitcoin, okay? Backed by Bitcoin. And they're actually putting that into their state pension funds. So not like Australia, we don't have really a state pension fund. We have a federal pension fund. In the US, it's all state-based, right? So states have said, actually, we believe in this asset so much, we're going to allocate a portion, it might be in the vicinity of 5% of their overall fund, to allocate as an asset into the pension funds to boost the strength of the pensions into the future. So that's already happening, right?
Yeah,
so people watching this like, oh, it's speculative, no one's going to do it. No, this is already happening. I mentioned El Salvador before. We've got Bhutan is another country, very, very tiny country in sort of Asia. It already has a very large strategic reserve and it mines its own Bitcoin, right? So this is not really sort of fringe anymore.
It's interesting because a lot of those countries, right? I mean, they've been the arse end of the fiat system. Right? They're the ones that have taken the brunt, I guess, of the way it operates in a sense where their dollar's worth nothing. Therefore, when they go to compete globally and even provide their services, whether it be now through this digital era where they work. I mean, I remember hiring people like in the Philippines for next to nothing. But these economies, these people are now waking up, right? The way we trade, the way we work is moving, which means that they're starting to see their value, their time being worth more. But these countries are waking up. And their dollar is so shit, like their currency is so shit, that it would make sense from my perspective that this would be an opportunity for them to dive in, to change the way they operate, to get off that monetary system and to adopt something new that could potentially change the game for them.
Right. It's a debt-based system.
Yeah.
That's the point of it. What I want to circle back to though was the fact that the way we might see before we get to a fully fledged Bitcoin economy globally is that.
Is it plausible?
Oh, absolutely.
As a simple yes, no, is it plausible?
Yeah. I mean, you've got payment systems that are already now in place.
And we can exchange, right?
Like we can go and... Yeah, but you can go into a cafe and just tap your phone, which is connected to your Bitcoin wallet and just beep, and you've just paid Bitcoin.
Yeah.
But I think there might be a transitional period where Bitcoin places gold. The US dollar is then backed not by gold, or maybe it's backed by gold and Bitcoin, right? That I can see actually happening. So we might see this transition where we still barter in dollars, but it's backed by something hard, which is, of course, traditionally it was gold, but we're not backed by gold anymore, right? They removed that. So I think it might move to the Bitcoin. So you could say a Bitcoin strategic reserve, and then the dollar is ahead of that still until it moves then fully to a full Bitcoin monetary system.
And one of the advantages, I guess, of then exploring this and adopting this movement, this lifestyle, right, is the ability to live borderless in a sense, in a way where, you can't pick up your assets, you can't pick up your car and just take all your watches and even your currency and go and live in Dubai, right? But now with the way we can work, but also how there is availability to this asset class, like we could do that and live really well. And you're exploring the opportunity of moving to Dubai.
Well, I'm doing the first step, which is dematerializing the assets. Okay.
So dematerializing meaning you're selling things off.
Let me share the story for the listeners. I got to a position where I thought I was doing pretty well, and to the point where I could afford to buy a dream car collection, a warehouse.
What cars did you have?
I actually had Subarus.
Yeah, wow.
Not Porsches or anything. So Subaru WRXs.
Yeah. Let me guess. You're a child of the 80s, 90s.
90s.
The Subarus, yeah.
Yeah, Subaru. So I had a 22B. You know what a 22B is?
No, but I know the WRX. The WRX was the pinnacle when I was growing up.
In the 90s versions, right? And if you ever had Gran Turismo, you had the 22B.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, you with me? So I had one of them sitting in the shed, right? I spent like 50 grand on it, had it completely, yep. And I had all these cars and sitting there, and I was like, fuck, this is cool. Had this shed that I polished the floors and blacked out the walls and what have you. And I sat there and I was like, fuck,
now what?
I've fucking made it. Yeah, I've got this nice house now. I've got the car shed. I've got some other investment properties as well. And then I just started with fucking it. This is just not, and I had a lot of Bitcoin too by this stage. And then I'm realizing, shit, it's actually, now that I've got it, I don't know. This is like, it's actually an anchor. They started to hold me back mentally, physically. I'm having to service the cars. I've got insurances on them. I'm like, oh, this is actually becoming an inconvenience. I'm kind of busy doing my other things, and these are sort of holding me back. And then I start doing the numbers. Now, this goes back to, you got to bring your better half along as well.
Yep.
There was a point, only probably a year and a half ago, I was like, babe, let's just sell the investment properties. I don't want them anymore, because obviously what most people go through is the returns really aren't there. You've got the maintenance, the one that people
the
miss.
realities.
The one they miss is the 7A loan repayment division. I think it's division 7A or something like that. But basically it's where your company makes all the money, your operational company, you then buy another asset in a trust, but then that trust now has to pay the money back to your company. Otherwise you get taxed. You can't just give it to the other company, right? So it's a whole big fuck around, right? Wow. So it's a big logistical, monetary nightmare of compliance and costs. So I'm like, you know what? And the other thing that was being thrown in there was, I need to get a Plan B passport, because the other thing that was the government was talking about, Shane, you remember this, which was unrealized capital gains tax.
When they started talking about that, it was like a kick in the dick.
Totally.
If I wasn't the only person that was absolutely shocked and outraged when I heard that, I'm like, you are fucking joking.
Yeah, are you joking me? We've been operating by this system, like accumulating super, because we've had to, right?
Yeah, because you're forced to.
And then the goalpost just went, boop. No, we're now going to come in and take that. Now, just so people know, there's about $4.2 trillion worth of superannuation, the honeypot that the government's like, you know what, we can't help it, Shane. We want to come.
We want to dip in there.
Take that.
Yeah, we want to dip in.
Now, the government, I'm going to go down rabbit hole now, but the government was talking about, this is how they framed it. We need to make the system fair, right? So what they were now doing is pinning you, if you had a decent size bit of wealth, against those who had less wealth, right? So it became a real, the haves and the have-nots. Okay. And this is the whole socialist agenda that they're pushing through.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Now, they have now not gone ahead with that. So let's just be clear. That's not going ahead right now.
But it's almost like hooking the frog. So what it is, in fact, it's almost like progressive overload, right? The concept of progressive overload is I give you something that's quite shocking and I anchor you at something that's quite shocking. And so then, because I've anchored you at this point, and then I said, no, we're not going to do that because we want to be fair. But let's say this was the position here, but now we can go in the middle.
And you know what position they've come to?
What is it?
It's now tax of 30% above 3 million. So it's up to 3 million is 15, above 3 million it's 30, and above 10 million it's now 40% tax, right? And they're like, oh, this is the compromise. Now there's a lot of argument to say exactly what you said. Hey, we'll throw this out there, unrealized capital gains tax, everyone will freak out, and then we'll come back.
That was an anchor. It's sales 101. If I want to anchor you, for example, let's say I've got something to sell you that's $10,000, right? A good salesperson, let's say that even if it was a suit, for example, I would never show you the cheap suit first. I would always take you to the most expensive suit first and get you emotionally attached to that or whatever it is, shock. And then I bring you back down to, let's say it was 20. When I now show you one that's 10, it sounds cheap. It's called perceptual contrast.
Right.
So what they've done is they've anchored you on this extreme idea, unrealized capital gains. They kick you in the dick and then they're like, well, actually, no, we're going to be fair. And in fact, you know what that is? That's called a moral high ground. And the reason they introduce a moral high ground of fairness, the frame of fairness, is because what you said at the start of the conversation today was Australians in particular just want to be treated fairly. So it's a bias we have towards how we interact with people, irrespective of the price that we agree on. I need to feel like, oh, you've treated me fairly. So whether they realize this or not, I bet you they do. The fuckers, I bet you they do. And they introduce a moral high ground so that you go, oh, okay, well, you were going to do this, but now you've been this. So in fact, you've been kind.
It's reasonable.
It's reasonable.
Yeah. It's reasonable.
But in fact, it's not. It's rude. Yeah.
So this was another, we talked about, the wake-up calls. This was another wake-up call. Hang on a second. So we're getting to the moving part.
Yeah.
Oh my God. This is like, we're going to have to put the pedal to the metal here and really hurry along and get the fuck out of this country before this unrealized capital gains comes in. So that really, there was one of the catalysts towards that. Now, then I had to start selling off I was already thinking maybe sell them, but now this is now I'm really selling them. Yeah. Sell this. All the properties started to go. I literally have another one a commercial property selling on Tuesday coming, and then another final one selling. And then that's it. All my investment properties are gone. Now I still own my owner occupied home though.
Yeah,
right?
You still got your home.
So the plan is two things. One, I'm gearing myself up ready to move if and when. Number one. Two is I'm going to move that money into what I consider the better asset, which is also something I can move anywhere in the world at any time that cannot be seized, that's in my control.
Hey guys, quick interruption, but an absolutely really important one. Now, if you're a coach or a consultant and you feel like you're behind, like you should be further along than you are right now, then I want you to listen up. It's not because you're not actually working hard. It's usually because you've been trying to grow without the right sequence. See, most founders try to do it all themselves, particularly the sales. They try to hire the salespeople without an ultra detailed sales philosophy. They try to scale their offer without a proven, battle-tested sales system. And of course, it feels overwhelming. I get it. And that's exactly why I created the Scale Up CEO, the launch pad for coaches and consultants who want to take their coaching or consulting business from $50K a month to $500 or maybe even $1 million a month predictably. And so if you are thinking or asking yourself, how do I actually get clients consistently? Where do I find sales staff that I can actually get to sell effectively? What do I do to ensure that my sales team are actually performing at a high level ethically? Or maybe even you're asking yourself, how do I build all of this out without burning myself down to the ground? Well, Scale Up CEO solves all of that step by step. That said, it is not for everyone. Given this opportunity is a done-for-you concierge-style sales service, we'll only take on established businesses that have a proven offer and a founder that's hungry for scale and, more importantly, extreme impact. Now, if you feel called to build something that actually changes people's lives and would like to apply to join the Scale Up CEO and have me and my team manage your business and drive your sales, then hit the link in the bio, make your application, and we'll see you on the other side. And it may or may not be true, but I recall recently hearing whether it was I'm not sure how you would describe this legislation that was coming out that the government is preparing for these types of situations. People like you switched on, have done their due diligence. They understand the game. They know what's going on. They're now starting to look at ways to change their reality, create sovereignty. And there was a law coming in, and I believe it was meant to be passed next year, which would mean that if you hadn't left the country, done what you're wanting to do by a certain date, they'd still be able to lock you in for taxes for the next 3 years or something if you left after a certain time. Now, I wouldn't know how to describe what the exact law was, but I remember hearing about it.
Yeah, they will ultimately want to bring in what the US has, which is global tax.
A global tax.
Yeah,
if you're a citizen.
So what they call a citizenship-based tax.
Yeah, right.
So if you still hold an Australian passport,
yeah, right,
you can say, yeah, but I live over in Dubai, Philippines, wherever.
Yeah,
like doesn't matter. You're a citizen of Australia.
So you would need to give up your citizenship, relinquish it, give it away.
Yeah, and then not be taxed.
Adopt.
Now, I just want to be clear because I've gone down this part, right? I'm already in the process of getting my Plan B. What they call a Plan B passport, right? Which is another passport. Yeah, essentially to go to another country. But people have to realize you can't just move to another country and just say, oh, okay, I'm not paying tax in Australia anymore, right? You've actually got to become a tax resident of another country first and then stop your tax residency in Australia by not just making a phone call and just say, I'm not paying tax anymore. You have to prove that you're now in this new country. A lease, a rent, you've bought a property, you have a business set up. So you have to establish your residency in another country. People think, and you have to do it like demonstrating. People make this mistake. I'm just going to keep all my assets in Australia and I'm not going to pay any tax there. Brilliant. I'm just going to move over to this country. No, tax officers are all over that shit. So hence, there's no point keeping them anyway. Yeah. Right. So I'm going to say, unless you want to keep paying tax in Australia, okay, if you think you might be coming back. Here's something that even one of your guests recently, Adam Hudson, that you had on your excellent show, Shane, which was that he came on and I had him on my podcast recently and I was able to extract this bit of information away. Yeah. He said, and now just for those who haven't seen the episode, they should go and check it out that you've done with him because he has moved to Cyprus. Now, he sold up all of his assets, moved to Cyprus. And I said, Adam, are you ever planning on moving back to Australia? And he hadn't disclosed this ever before. And he said, yeah, I am. But in 10 years, I'm taking all of my wealth, take it out of Australia. I'm going to compound the shit out of it.
Come back.
And then I'm like, oh my God, genius. So when you're pitching to your better half, and I've done this, hey babe, let's move to Dubai. It's not a case of let's move to Dubai forever. And you can also live in Dubai as a tax resident there, and of course pay no tax basically in Dubai. No capital gains tax, no inheritance tax, no income tax, no property tax.
Is there a death tax?
No death tax. Nothing.
That's the best one of all. You think it's taxed when you're fucking dead.
Nothing, right? You can now imagine, and I did a podcast actually on that exact strategy of, okay, what is the difference between if we moved overseas and just compounded everything compared to actually staying in Australia? It was like night and day. It was like $200 million compared to you left with $2 million, right?
Crazy.
It was nuts.
We don't understand I suppose the power of the compound effect on your money.
Well, I just show people.
Yeah, that was a clear sign when you just looked at the $150,000 left in your traditional superannuation versus pulling out a portion. It was like a third.
Yeah.
And then putting it in a different asset and that compounding effect. So it's that compounding effect that is the power. And I love the idea of, and I don't think we should ever be or approach things in a way where we're so definitive in a sense of, well, we're moving to Dubai, for example, forever, or we're moving here or moving there. I think the beautiful thing about this day and age and right now and the opportunity we have is that we can be a little more fluid and we can choose to experience things for a period until it serves us and then say, well, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm going to move somewhere else.
Yeah, we're not locked in.
An example of that for me, just a little bit of an insight, was for many years I was in the fitness game and I was a prisoner to a location. So that my first demonstration or feeling of freedom was breaking the idea that in order to earn, I had to be in a location exchanging my time. And so we spoke a little bit earlier about, sort of the goal. The goal is freedom. How we get to freedom is identity shift. The first thing that needs to happen is we need to reject a certain way of living. Break an identity, allow it to die and learn new skills like you did when you started learning e-com. Effectively what happened was there's this shedding of skin that you're saying, well, I'm going to reject this idea of who I was. I'm going to grow and become a new person. I'm going to open myself up to the possibility, start applying what I'm learning, going forward with courage. And then you continue to do that. The first for me was breaking that idea, which now gives me the ability to, if I wanted to work for 6 months, live in 6 months in the Gold Coast, I could. How many people can say that? If I wanted to go to Bali for the next year, I could, and still earn it would make no difference. And so I think the most beautiful thing about this, like now, this moment is not only can you work remotely, but you get to choose then, where you're a citizen, what you experience. I mean, honestly, when I think about it, I grew up in Redfern. In Sydney. I don't know if you know Redfern, close to where the South Sydney Rabbitohs and their training ground was.
It's not a place that
you want to grow up. Let me tell you. No? I can tell you some stories.
I was born in Penrith. Does that count?
Well, it's pretty close, mate. I couldn't think of anything worse than going through your life and staying in the same spot, seeing the same things, the same experiences, despite how beautiful the Sydney Harbour is. And it's not that you lose gratitude or you lose the idea that, hey, this is beautiful, but there is so much more. And I think the movement of Bitcoin for me and the idea of freedom and sovereignty is that it's just that we're here for such a short period of time.
You might as well go and experience
Why not experience as much as you can, maximize your time and therefore what you get in return, how much it compounds so that you can, I use the word bless, but not in a Christian way, but bless like people around you, give and you see some of these people with wealth and the true wealthy are probably the most generous people that I meet, but the reason they can get there is because of their attitude, their energy and what they do. I love the idea of just being able to be a nomad in that sense. And it doesn't mean that you don't appreciate being at a time, like being somewhere for a period and building a community, because that's important, having meaningful relationships. But I think the idea of community now can be global.
Oh, totally. I mean, I've created an online community.
Like you and I now are mates and I live in New South Wales, you live up here and we're here. Like we're exchanging, we're working together here on the show.
Yeah.
So the idea of being able to move to Dubai, being able to do different things, I think it's the most appealing part of what the freedom formula is about.
Yeah. But I want to give the pitch though to tell you better half, which is that you don't have to live in Dubai forever.
No, you don't.
One, and you can live there for 6 months of the year, and then we'll live in Italy for a month, then we'll live in Singapore for a month, right? That would be obviously freedom. And of course, tying it back to Bitcoin is I'm moving my wealth wherever I go. I don't have to lock it into a certain country.
So tell me about nodes then, right? And this is a really stupid question, right? Real stupid question. Yeah. But I've been buying Bitcoin, and you might scold me for this, but I hope you do if it's the wrong way to go about it, because I do need some coaching, by the way. But I do listen to Adam. I do listen to different people that I'm leaning into, and then reading books and whatnot. But I'm becoming aware that there's ways to store that are probably, maybe for lack of a better term, better and worse.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah. And the node really is not really a way of storing your Bitcoin. The node is really to verify the transaction and to verify that the Bitcoin is yours via the node.
Okay. So you're protecting the
you're verifying.
Verifying.
Think of it as you're verifying it through. And so what runs is the node is essentially a computer.
Yep.
Right. And it's running the blockchain. The blockchain is the ledger, the digital ledger of Bitcoin.
The proof of
it's where all the buys and sells are listed. Yeah, the ledger. Yeah, digitally on the blockchain. Okay. Now, you don't have to have one of those, but what you do have to have, I have one. Yeah. And in fact,
the node, you got the node.
I got the node.
If you've got one, I need one.
Yeah. I'll put you in touch with the right people.
Okay.
Yeah. And so what you've got to have is cold wallet storage.
Yes.
Okay. And for simplicity's sake, think of it as a bank where you keep your Bitcoin. So I literally log onto a computer interface, dashboard, and I can see my Bitcoin listed there, which is, because we're going to say, well, how do you know it's there? Well, it's like when you log on to your bank, how do you know that the money sitting in your ANZ account is actually there?
It's just digital.
You don't. Okay. But I do know my Bitcoin is there, verifying it through the node.
Yes.
Okay. So that's how that ties in. And the reason why you want it in cold storage is so that it cannot be seized.
Yeah, wow.
Okay. So I'm now moving that Bitcoin wherever I want.
So what's the difference between cold storage, again, another stupid question, and, for example,
a hot wallet?
Yeah, where for example, I purchase Bitcoin through
an exchange,
which is like quite a regular exchange, like Swift, for example, being one of those.
Yeah.
What's the difference between someone like Swift versus the cold storage?
Well, the number one crypto exchange in Australia is CoinStash. They're actually based out of Brisbane, right? CoinStash is the number one, specializing in SMSF setups. Okay. They, funny enough, are the only exchange in Australia that is audited for proof of reserves. Do they have the Bitcoin? Like, you've bought Bitcoin through CoinStash, let's say.
Yep.
Now, you want to make sure they've actually got it. They're the only exchange in Australia that verifies via third-party independent audit that your Bitcoin is actually sitting
They choose to have that done, you're saying?
Yes. Why? Because there's so much, you want trust of your organization, right? And so they're willing to put their hand up and say, yes, we will allow other people to verify and audit our proof of reserves, right? So that's a major factor when it comes, because how do you know they've got it? And so this is where other companies perhaps have got unstuck before, another issue, but basically they, what's called rehypothecate the Bitcoin. So you've got Bitcoin with them, but then they go, you know what?
No.
We're going to lend this to somebody else and get a return from it. And then they lend it to somebody else. And next thing you know, your Bitcoin is gone.
Doesn't exist.
And if that company goes down, that Bitcoin's not with them. Okay. So you've got to choose the right exchange. Now, there is nothing wrong with the average punter holding Bitcoin on an exchange. So the custody of the Bitcoin is with the exchange.
Yep.
Okay. What I do is and people like, we've spoken about before, is do one step further, is I remove the custody from the exchange and put it into cold wallet storage. That means that I'm now responsible.
It's kind of like your own bank.
It's like your own bank.
It's like a little, it's like your own bank.
My own bank. I have control over it. I can move my Bitcoin to and from wherever I want without having to ask a big bank, without having them to ask me a bazillion questions of where my Bitcoin's being sent to, et cetera, right? So it is extremely powerful. Here's a part that the listeners are going to want to listen to, like here, right? Because I think that the window is closing on this, Shane, right? And this is
in what way?
In the sense that the government is going to pick up on this and they're going to shut the door. Okay. And that is the fact that right now, when I move my super into an SMSF structure and allocate to Bitcoin, which I could do through CoinStash. I can go and buy my Bitcoin in my SMSF through CoinStash. Okay. I'm now going to move that into my cold wallet. I now custody my SMSF Bitcoin. That is massive. People are like, hang on a second. Right now, you can't go and custody your superannuation. You can't go and just say, I'm going to take possession of those shares, right? Now, you could still argue, look, I'm going to allocate to, I own the house. People like to buy a property in an SMSF, and they can say, well, that's the house that I own in my SMSF. But can you take it with you?
Okay.
No, you can't. You cannot take that house with you.
Mm.
This has been reportedly been a little bit of a problem now. I'm not saying people should do this, but this is a window, I think, which is closing, which is the government will pick up on this and say, you know what? No more self-custody for anyone who has an SMSF and has Bitcoin.
No more self-custody.
No more self-custody.
What would
You
be their
have to leave it on
concern with that?
exchange.
The control?
Because what's happening is some people are just walking out of the country with their super.
And for them, it means that they don't have access to money that they can invest or they can leverage
The
off.
thing is, Shane,
Mm.
let's just say you allocated to Bitcoin so many years ago and you now hold, like in your super fund, right? You moved to an SMSF, you bought Bitcoin, and now, or even fast forward 5 years, you're now holding $10, $20 million worth of Bitcoin.
Mhm.
Okay. You're like, shit, I don't want to have to wait till I'm freaking 60 to access this.
Yeah.
Right? I've got $20 million worth of Bitcoin
Not
sitting
bad.
there.
Yeah.
I'm just going to take this to Bali and I'm just going to cash it out maybe, or a portion, let's say, and live my life.
And live large.
And you could be 50.
Yeah.
You see? And so that's what's happening.
Right.
And so the government hates that.
Mm.
Okay. Because it is against the law.
How dare
Okay.
you? How dare you?
But how do they stop it? They can't stop it because you remember?
Yep.
You take your seed phrase with you, which is your
Yep.
passwords to access your Bitcoin, which you can then access it anywhere in the world.
And your cold storage, that is something that just obviously is digital. So you take that anywhere with you. You take your node with you if you've got one, if you're as advanced as you are, and off you go. And you can take your asset with you.
So no one's got control over it. So if you go to an exchange, they're holding the Bitcoin on their exchange for you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, on your behalf.
Yeah.
Okay. So, but you don't have any control over it now, in a sense. Like they could walk off with it too, for example, right? So
Is that likely?
no, it's not. But I'm just saying that is the counterparty risk is that the CEO of XYZ company walks off with your Bitcoin or spends it, or that company goes bankrupt for whatever reason. That's why with CoinStash, we love it because they're audited.
Because there's more transparency.
And transparency.
What I love is that the idea of that reducing counterparty risk. It's about looking at every opportunity to reduce the risk and put yourself in more and more of a position of leverage and strength and control and certainty. Basically, is what we amplify with that.
So let me just wrap up this for people. Now, yes, I've just said the illegal things that you should not be doing with your SMSF, but I believe the window is closing even just in cold.
What makes you think that? What makes you think that the window's closing?
Well, the government doesn't want you to have control over your own asset.
Mm-hmm.
And they realize that some people are walking out of the country with their super.
Yeah, well.
You see, which is like, hey, you have to wait till you're 60 to access that.
Mm.
Yeah, but they're not. They're just walking out.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I think that's going to then roll over to we're going to restrict people from accessing a cold wallet full stop across the whole spectrum. So you'll only be out. I think this is where this is going.
You're not the first person I've heard talk about this.
Well, there's so many new laws coming in right now in the EU.
Yeah.
I did a whole podcast about it, and they're draconian laws. Even things like you've got a KYC. No, you have to report on who you're sending it to, right? What's the purpose for things like €1,000. So basically every transaction.
Every transaction.
Yeah, there's a whole host of things that they're bringing in. We pray that it doesn't roll over into Australia, but it probably will.
Probably will.
Under their socialist regime.
Yeah. You can see it going that way.
Yeah. But before we run out of time, Shane, I'm wondering if we can actually go into talking about lending.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Because we haven't touched on that.
We haven't touched on that yet.
Because you've got so many people that I think that follow you who are entrepreneurs, who are business people, who are thinking about how can I actually use Bitcoin? Because the common concern for me from other people is I've got Bitcoin, but how do I use it?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, there's multiple ways. One is you can use Bitcoin to pay for things.
Yep.
So it was Emirates, for example, airlines, as of January 1, they're going to accept Bitcoin.
Incredible.
Ferrari not everyone's running out to buy Ferraris, but Ferrari in the US is now accepting Bitcoin. Many Porsche, Ferrari, etc. in Europe already accept Bitcoin as payment.
Yep.
Okay.
Amazing.
And so that's the first thing. And I think this will just spread more. The next thing is, how do I use my Bitcoin without actually selling my Bitcoin? Okay. This is super, super powerful. What you can do today, this is not like in 10 years' time.
Right now.
You could hold, Shane, $10 million worth of Bitcoin. Okay. Let's say a development comes up. You might be doing some property development, but you don't want to sell your Bitcoin. Why would you want to sell something? One, where you're going to have to pay capital gains tax.
Yep.
Yeah. Two, sell an asset that's still appreciating at 40+%
Makes
a year.
no sense.
You're going to be like, no, I want to hold on to that. Right.
Absolutely.
But I also need to get some cash to do some development.
To do something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And perhaps you don't want to use a bank.
Yep.
So what you could now do is post up. In this case, let's say we need access to $1 million of your 10. We can actually give $2 million of Bitcoin collateral to a lender. They will lend you 50% cash. So
Wow.
you've given them 2.
Yep.
They're going to lend you $1 million, right? This is going to blow you away.
Yep.
No pay slip, no group certificate, no tax return, no A&L, no P&L, no balance sheet, no credit check.
Nothing.
They will transfer that money to you into your bank account, your everyday fiat currency bank account, within 48 hours. This is revolutionary. It's already happening right now in Australia. People don't know about it.
Yeah.
And I think the banks are doomed, right? Why would you go to a bank,
Well, you wouldn't.
right? Interest rates, about 10%. Okay. Guess what else? No ongoing repayment. Not zero repayment, if it's no ongoing repayment. What they do is they capitalize the interest.
Okay.
Let's say you borrowed $1 million for the listeners, $1 million, 10%. At the end of 1 year, you'll now owe $1.1 million, $100,000 of interest on your $1 million. Okay. But you now have access to capital.
Yep.
Within 48 hours, you can now take that as literally cash and go and do your development. You're renovating the house, you're flipping a house, whatever it is. Once you flip the house, you then just pay back the loan, take your Bitcoin back, or do it again, or whatever it is. Yeah. That is so powerful. And the people who the entrepreneurs and the business people who follow you, I think they'll be like, holy smokes, because we went to the bank the other day and they wanted everything under the sun.
It's almost impossible to get money. I mean, the loopholes you got to jump through. So what I'm hearing in there is it's almost like free money. I mean,
it's not free.
Well, in a sense where like, when I look at it, I think if I was to take out this loan, right? And let's say they capitalize, as you say, right? They're going to put $100,000 in the back end, 10%. So I've got to pay that back. However, if I'm still holding the Bitcoin and it's still appreciating, but it's appreciating at a rate faster and gaining more in a sense than even the money I've taken out.
Yes. So if the growth rate is, let's just say it's 40% for the year.
Let's say it was 40%.
The net is now 30%.
Yeah.
Upside.
So you're still upside in the sense where you're still gaining, you're still moving forward, and you've taken out a loan to do something else, which in theory you should profit from as well.
Yeah. Now the next thing for people to blow their mind is the theory of borrowing against your Bitcoin to live. Now this can only be done though, Shane, on a large stack, because unless you want to live on pittance, right? Let's just say that you were happy to live on $500,000 a year.
Yeah.
That was your salary essentially, right?
Of cash.
Just cash.
Post-tax type thing.
You just used to the groceries and the car repayment and whatever it is, right? Holidays, $500,000. So of your $10 million stack, you would only have to give the Bitcoin-backed lender $1 million. You would now receive $500,000 in cash within 48 hours with no pay slips and no credit check. Okay?
Yep.
And you wouldn't have to pay that back essentially. Yeah, in fact, you don't really have to pay it back ever. The system automatically rolls the debt over, including the interest, every 12 months. So into the second year, you would have a debt of $550,000. Okay. Now, this only works if Bitcoin continues to go up. Okay. Let's say people say, what if it goes down? That's fine. You've still got $9 million worth of Bitcoin. And even if that drops down to $5 million, let's say it drops 50% roughly. Yeah. You got $5 million. You can now just top up your collateral, so increasing the value of what you've posted up with the lender so that you don't get, say, liquidated, right?
Yep.
And so, in fact, the lender will let you go up to 80% loan to value ratio, so LVR,
Yep.
before there's even a liquidation. So the Bitcoin could drop in value, your loan's sitting here and it could get to here at 80%, it's still fine.
You're still fine. Michael Saylor talks a lot about where Bitcoin is going, right? And so we've discussed briefly where it peaked, and that was
126,000
USD. And at this point in time today, as of what's the date today?
28th.
28th
It's roughly
November.
91,000 USD.
91,000. So we've had a little bit of a, what do we call it?
Correction.
A correction.
A dip. Drop.
Dip, adjustment. Adjustment.
Yeah.
Short term. Michael Saylor talks a lot about where it's going, and I've heard some of his speeches and stuff and talking about some incredible, or a vision, right? Where do you see it going?
I don't make predictions. And you know what, Shane? There are so many people in this world who are much smarter than me. I just gave you a book today, Bitcoin 1
Which
million.
I will read.
Now, the prediction in that book, these are by scientific mathematician type people based on
Am
the
I
numbers.
to assume $1 million? Is that why the title is Bitcoin?
It could be that. 1 million USD. Their prediction is by 2035.
Okay.
Okay. Based on what they call the power law, which is based on adoption.
Power law.
The power law model is what they call it. So 2035, 1 million USD. So we're talking in the vicinity of probably 1.7 odd million Aussie dollars, something like that.
Give us some context. So if that was to be true, right, in its true value, and if it was to hit that, and if today you held, for simple numbers, perhaps let's just say you held 10,000, would that be simple enough? If you held $10,000
It's roughly a
AUD,
10x, a 10 to 11x roughly. Let's just say 10x. Yeah,
10x
from here.
So if you had 100,000,
you would be $1 million.
if you had $1 million,
yeah,
10
10 million. Yeah, I mean, and
there is no investment ever in the history of.
But that's just by 2035. There's not like it gets to 2035 and it stops. Because Michael Saylor's prediction is 13 million. I'm pretty sure it's by within 20 years. 13 million USD within 20 years.
That's insane.
Totally insane. And so Michael Saylor says that the next 20 years is considered the gold rush for Bitcoin, where everyone is now piling into Bitcoin. I've already talked about the nation states, the institutions, the governments that are buying up Bitcoin like no tomorrow, including banks. There are banks that are now buying up Bitcoin. Yeah, whether it's through
governments
an ETF, or Bitcoin directly. And we haven't really seen that in Australia, but in America, it's basically there's an announcement like every other day. JP Morgan, Bank of America.
And that should be a sign.
It's a sign. And if people think it's such a big scam, which is so funny, but JP Morgan has said.
Can we just touch on that for a second? Why people think it's a scam, and just to make sure, I guess we give it the I suppose clarity it should have. The reason people think it's a scam is because they don't understand it. It's just how we're pre-wired genetically, right?
Yeah.
So when we don't understand something, there's a cognitive load in that, and if the load's too heavy, in other words, I'm listening to you today, right? There's a cognitive load because that is what you're sharing is a lot of information that I'm not yet up to speed with. There's a particular type of load, and if I don't have the right, I suppose, mindset, we could call it that, to be able to absorb it and entertain the idea, I reject it because I don't understand it. And that's just evolutionary protection. So my reptilian brain goes immediately into stop. I don't understand it.
Yeah.
And so if I'm an Australian, I will go, it's a fucking scam, right? That's why we do that. So when you expose yourself to the evidence, the research, and you start to put the idea aside and you entertain the plausibility of the thing, then you open yourself up to, well, like subjectively, you open yourself up to it. We'll say, okay, well, let me look at the data. Let me look at the evidence.
I say to people, because people think I need to understand Bitcoin before I invest in Bitcoin, right? I think that's a mistake.
Yeah, I was going to ask, true or false?
I think it's a mistake. I think just learn the process of opening up an account with an exchange and buying like $100 worth of Bitcoin, right? You're not going to be losing sleep over $100 of Bitcoin.
Most people spend more, look, what I've witnessed recently is crazy, right? Like you've got the same people calling it a scam and scared of losing $1,000, the same people that will go to the casino
And I see, mate, I'm staying there, this last couple of nights at nice hotel there, but I don't gamble. I walk through the floor and I see people literally taking these green bills out of a machine. You ever seen those?
Mm-mm.
But the bills are so thick.
I don't gamble either.
Right, but have you seen the bills that come out of a machine, the ATM?
Yeah.
Yeah, the fiat. They're taking all these $100 bills,
Yeah.
but I'm talking a fat stack, and
Wow.
they'll go to a machine, they'll put it in and not think twice. But that same individual will have an issue with personal development. They'll have an issue with spending money on coaching. They'll have an issue with joining a mastermind. They'll have an issue with investing into an asset class like Bitcoin because I don't understand it.
Yeah. The reason why
It's
I say
risky.
allocate just even $100
Yeah,
is
even
because
small.
your mind will shift then. You'll start to pay attention. So what you're invested in is you pay attention to.
I agree.
Okay. And so therefore, because you put some skin in the game, I've got $100, you might monitor it. You might be watching, you might have the app on your phone that you can see what the price is doing on a daily basis. You might then be subject to podcasts, ones that you're doing.
Self-education, expose yourself to the conversations, to the ideas, to the influences, to the experts, to the research. And, like recently I started putting money in, right? And I'm in.
Mm-hmm.
But one thing—
Did you start paying more attention to it then?
Most definitely. But one thing that I understood before I started putting money in was that I cannot go into it with a short-term mindset and exposing myself to the education, reading the Bitcoin Standard and listening to Michael Saylor, different people that I'm watching, I'm listening to yourself. Then I went in unemotional in the sense knowing, okay, I believe, my fundamental belief is that this is a new way of the future. This is where it's going based on my limited understanding because I only know what I know based on what I know today. But I know enough to understand this is where I believe it to be going. The reality is this: if it's not going to zero, then it's only going in one direction. The thing I continually hear. And so I'm like, all right, well then, irrespective of what I see in the short term, I understand that that's a short-term reaction. And in fact, what I should be more concerned about is doing nothing. Because the biggest risk we have today is not what we put in, it's what we don't put in. Because then we'll look back in 10 years and go, holy fuck, I wish I should have. I could have. And I always say, do not be, I'm a gunner. Look at the situation and go, well, what's the best case, worst case? Best case goes to 1 million. What's the actual worst case?
Well, I guess people are going to say the worst case, it goes to zero.
The reality is
let me tell people a fact. In history, and if an asset class like property, like gold, right, has ever reached $2 trillion market cap, right? So the amount of money that's in the asset, it's never ever in history gone to zero. Never gone away. It stays.
What's Bitcoin at now?
It's about 2 trillion.
So it's reached that threshold.
It's over 2 trillion. Maybe it's 2.1. Don't quote me, but it's reached over 2 trillion. In comparison, now this is an old number before the recent spike in gold, but in comparison, Bitcoin gold was about 20 trillion. Right. So and I think it's gone up to 30 or 40 trillion in the recent spike, something like that. But so to give you an idea, so when you're comparing Bitcoin 2 trillion to, let's say, gold at 30 odd trillion, that's why we say we're so early, because this has got so much more
opportunity, so much room to grow.
And there's a lot of thesis out there to say that the Bitcoin will overtake gold. So we're talking 10, 20x and beyond in market cap. So that's where it's got to go.
I heard the idea, and that, sort of circling back to that, which was, and I believe it was Adam who I heard talk about this, even if it was third party in terms of relaying what he heard from someone else or whatever it was. But the idea that, well, if it's not going to zero, and this is why we believe it's not going to zero, and then they rattle off all the things, whether it be about institutions, governments, and sort of where it's going. If it's not going to zero, then it's only going in one direction. And then they'll go through the evidence, the facts, and what's happening right now, and this is why it's moving in that direction. So our biggest risk, again, for those listeners, if you're sitting on the fence trying to, come to terms.
And we don't make any money. Like you and I don't make any money by someone going out and buying Bitcoin.
Makes no difference to me other than, I want to expose my listeners and people that will take the time to listen to this podcast with the education and the inspiration to chase sovereignty, to chase freedom, whether it be in how you work, where you live, and all the things around that. And so I believe Bitcoin to be such a huge part of that factor in the very near future. In fact, something we have to touch on is the idea that we explored even before the podcast started, which was you can actually, for those business owners out there who may want to explore other ways to leverage their company profits, where you can actually purchase Bitcoin and it in a particular way where it then sits on your balance sheet. And the beautiful thing I heard about that, which was that when you do that, I mean, it's untaxed in terms of when you sort of push it across into Bitcoin, but it's compounding in a way that the fiat currency doesn't.
Yeah.
But it's still sitting on your balance sheet.
Yeah. So what we're talking about is creating I guess you would call it a Bitcoin treasury, which is just holding Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Within your company.
Yeah,
within your company. So it's something that I started doing back in 2022. I had a business that was.
Did you do a weekly or monthly allocation? How did you set that up?
I don't remember the specific number, but it was I've got multi-millions sitting in Bitcoin basically. Right?
And was that through a traditional, where were you purchasing it? Through a traditional?
Through my PTY Ltd company.
Yeah.
Okay.
But were you buying it through like one of those traditional apps or?
No, just through an exchange.
Just a traditional exchange.
So
like
for people to understand,
CoinStash.
Just like CoinStash. I'm going to go to CoinStash. I'm going to open up an account with them in my company name.
Yep.
I'm then going to move money, fiat dollars, from my company operating account.
Yep.
Right.
Income account.
Just send it over, right?
Yep.
So CoinStash is going to give you a BSPN account number. You just send it into CoinStash, which is in now my PTY Ltd company name, and then I just buy Bitcoin. And that's it. That's literally the process. I mean, it can't be any simpler than that, right?
Yep.
And so now I'm just stacking Bitcoin within my company. Now, why would I want to do that as opposed to moving it out? If I move money out of my company, I'm going to pay tax. I'm going to move it from my company name to my personal name. Now it's treated as income. Yeah.
Yep.
And I'm going to pay basically 47%, 49% tax. I'm going to get absolutely rammed.
Robbed.
Yeah. Thank you. I'm trying to think of the right word. Robbed. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to lose half of the money. So let's just talk in $100,000. I can move $100,000 to my personal name, pay half of it to the government, and then buy $50,000 worth of Bitcoin.
Yep.
Or I can keep the $100,000 in my company, right, which is of course after tax.
Yep.
Profit, and move that $100,000 into Bitcoin. So now I've got double the exposure in Bitcoin.
Double the exposure.
Okay. Now, the issue in the future might be, if you ever decide to sell that, you're going to have to pay more tax. Well, you never not invest in something because you think you may have to pay more tax.
It'd be ridiculous to latch onto that because you're rejecting then being profitable.
However, Shane,
yeah.
here's the way around that, which I alluded to before, which is that I've now got $100,000. It's now grown to $1 million it's 10x over a period of time. I want to access that capital. I can now borrow against that.
Now we're playing.
I can borrow against the funds I've got, the Bitcoin I've now got. Yeah, I've got $1 million worth of Bitcoin. It's in my company name. I'm now going to borrow against that. It's a loan. A loan is not taxed. Okay, I'll leave it there because we could go down more rabbit holes, but that's basically the fundamentals.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, just to be clear, I've got multiple streams. So I've gone down more rabbit holes. I even do Bitcoin mining.
Okay.
Where I'm receiving Bitcoin from Bitcoin mining machines that I own in Ethiopia and also in Norway, cheap energy there.
Yep.
So I've got SMSF set up. I have a company set up. I have personal name set up as well.
So you've got Bitcoin in different places, you're saying?
Under different entities.
Yeah. Other than just your personal, you've got these different strategies within.
Correct.
Yeah.
Now someone's going to say, why would you have it in your personal name then? Yeah. Well, it's just that I had a lot of money.
Because you had money, you sold a property, you sold some cars and so
there's
forth.
Ways where you don't want to have to put it back into the company and
Yeah.
you just sort of end up in your personal name. You're like, shit, I might as well just buy Bitcoin then.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then deal with whatever the taxes are later. Yeah, or not.
So the idea being where you can and however you can, then through different ways and different streams, as you said, basically getting what you can into this asset class so that it continues to compound at the rate which obviously exceeds inflation. And I love the idea, and we're probably going to not have time to talk about this, but like we sort of touched on for a second the idea of getting a loan, in other words, to live for free in a basic way, right? And having this ability.
Yes.
Right now, it's so expensive to buy bananas. It's so expensive to buy blueberries or whatever it is. The idea that someone could virtually create a situation, a scenario where they live in a beautiful location somewhere around the world, whatever, having people, for lack of a better term, serve them and being in Thailand, look after them and support people, whatever it is, and then being able to live for free whilst enjoying all that.
I used the scenario before with yourself,
Yeah.
and I said, you pulled out $500,000, you lived off that. You could probably go to Bali and let's change it a bit to make it more accessible.
Yeah.
You pulled out $50,000. and you lived off that money, which was borrowed money.
Yep.
Yeah. Which you never had to make a repayment on, which you could simply live quite, maybe, I don't know what it costs to live in Bali. I'm presuming it's cheaper. But that's, you live within your means.
If there was an offer that was more red hot in history than that, then I'd want to see it. What I mean by an offer is, I look at that as a way to solve a problem for people, something that we could legitimately package up and sell. I'm saying that openly on this podcast because the reality is like, who would not want the help to set that up? Because I can listen to that, right? But there's still so many questions in my mind. And it's like, okay, but how? To think that something like that is plausible, it's possible, and that could be done so easily.
It's possible today.
Yes.
This is not like, I think in the future you're going to be able to do this, this, and this. No. Today, there are lenders giving you cash tax-free against your Bitcoin, right? So the trick for people then is, I need to hold Bitcoin.
Yeah.
So if they don't hold the asset.
Well, if you don't hold the asset, you don't have the option to be able to play that type of game.
That's
I want to do a little social experiment. So if you're listening to this podcast and the idea of having someone like help you do that, set it up and to get that type of structure in place where you could leverage a system like that and have it done for you, if that lights you up from within and that is interest and you're interested in that, then comment below and whatever platform you're listening to this on, and Matt and I will look at that. And it's a bit of a social experiment. Let's see whether or not there's demand for that specifically, because I think something like that would be red hot. Because right now, like one of my offers, what I do, one of my businesses, if the listeners don't know, is I have a health company and we help people identify cardiac risk and prevent heart attacks, right? Mm-hmm. For anyone over 40, that's our avatar. And we do an incredible job at it, right? I think about an addressable market, a TAM, a total addressable market. I mean, and something that's red hot. Like that would have to be right now in this day and age, something that
concept, Shane, is actually not new.
No, I know it's not new, but it's new to me or it's new to listeners who haven't heard it.
With Bitcoin, right? Yeah. Now, the concept has been propagated by the rich and famous and I'm talking about the super rich, right, for centuries, right, which is borrow against their assets, live off that money, never sell the asset. So that's the principle.
It's
now we're just adopting it to Bitcoin. And of course, in yesteryear, there was no Bitcoin. So they had to have, billions of dollars
physical assets
of assets,
and
properties, shares.
Yeah.
And so they would borrow against those assets through their private bankers and live off the money, never sell the assets. Now, the retailer, the average Joe, you and me, can now do it ourselves without the banks, right? Yes, we're going to give it to a lender, but right now the lenders aren't even banks. The banks will catch up. The banks are going to realize that, holy shit, we need to jump onto this because these other non-bank lenders that are happy to take Bitcoin and give cash, and there's a couple of them around. They're going to basically take our lunch, right? Yeah. And so the banks eventually, like they are in America, so the banks, so to be clear, JP Morgan in like the past 2 weeks has already come out and said, we are now going to custody Bitcoin and use it as collateral to lend so people can lend against it. That is JP Morgan in the US. Okay. So the banks in Australia will eventually catch up. And then the issue with that, the risk is back to counterparty risk. So imagine that this day in the future, Commonwealth Bank.
Yep.
We are now going to allow you to custody Bitcoin with the Commonwealth Bank. We're brilliant. Yeah. Now the average Joe on the street is going to be like, let's call it actually, we're the average Joe. Yeah. The normies are going to be like, oh, brilliant. We love the Commonwealth Bank. This Bitcoin thing must be legitimate now. Yeah. Oh, for the last 10 years, we didn't think it was, but now it is, right? Because Commonwealth Bank's going to take it. So the Commonwealth Bank will even say, guess what? We will also hold this Bitcoin for you, you stupid normie, because you don't know how to self-custody. We'll make it simple for you. And the normie's going to go, oh, great, because we're too busy smoking dope.
Yeah.
So then what's going to happen is you're going to one day wake up after you finish smoking dope one day and say, actually, I want to take my Bitcoin with me now. Sorry? Say what? Well, Commonwealth Bank. Oh, you want to take your Bitcoin? Well, here's about 1,000 questions that you need to answer. Yeah. And you're only allowed to take out $1,000 a month in Bitcoin.
Yep.
Yeah. And then, so now the restrictions come back in again, full control again. Now back to the whole reason why you've got this podcast. The whole
reason why you got it in the first place is freedom.
And the whole reason why you have this podcast, Shane, for freedom is gone. And that's why self-custody is so important for the freedom movement.
And having the control.
Having the control.
The one thing that humans fight for most is autonomy. even if you don't recognize it. Many give it up because it's always been, for example, and that's what we've been exposed to, whatever it is. But the one thing we fight for most is autonomy, choice, being able to decide for ourselves, even if it's just the idea that we're deciding, even if it's just the idea, right? We fight for that. What is it that you stand for, and what is it that you fight against?
Fundamentally fight against government overreach. I absolutely can't stand it. The unrealized capital, well, the COVID era was the first wake-up call. Then it moved into unrealized capital gains tax. Absolutely unbelievable. Yeah. And in that respect, I fight for a freedom level. But we spoke earlier, Shane, it's like there's different levels of freedom. And I asked my wife last night, I said, babe, what would you consider freedom? And she said, I can't remember what she said actually, just more time, I think, because we have businesses. And I said, I would love a clear diary, just the diary is removed.
Nothing,
but that's kind of, I guess maybe it's being a bit silly in a way, but because I actually do have a lot of freedom. Like I'm here today on a work day with yourself, talking about the things that we love to talk about to try and help other people to open their eyes up to things like Bitcoin. Yeah. Now, I have the privilege to be here. I get the privilege of taking my daughter to school. When you speak to someone who's like, I've got to get to work and do this and that, I'd love to be able to take my daughter to school. And sometimes I fall into the monotony of it and I have to stop and think, wow, I get to do this. I get to just walk my daughter into school every morning. She's in preschool. Wow, this is fantastic. Right. So there's those types of freedoms that I see. If I wanted to, I could not come to the podcast today and say, no, I don't want that in my diary, But I've also tried to structure my life in a way to do things that I want to do.
Yeah.
Right. Hence why I started the crypto collective movement.
Yeah.
Right. I had a choice where it was like, hey, do you want to do nothing? You know yourself, Shane, once you've reached a certain level of success where you kind of don't really have to work, but you kind of want to do something.
Yeah.
You can't just sit
We're purpose-driven creatures.
That's it. And so the purpose right now is to help 100,000 Australians allocate their superannuation to an SMSF to Bitcoin. That would be my goal right now. And it's obviously done through right now this online free community where people can come into step-by-step guide of how to do it themselves. And there's some other things that they can partner in as well. But fundamentally, it's all there for free. Just come in and there it is.
But I guess have we really gone through what you fight against? The control.
Well, I was very vocal against the government control of the unrealized superannuation tax. I was just nonstop on social media, just calling it out. And what was fascinating was people.
What kind of response did you get?
Mixed response was, I love it because I love getting attacked. So if anyone in the comments wants to say, that Matt guy sucks, he's a capitalist, something, he loves money, brilliant, bring it on. I love that shit.
The only people that complain about money are those that don't have it.
Oh, these are all socialists. All the commies were in there as well. We need to tax you more. If you're not paying tax, you're not paying enough, right? It was unbelievable. And I just said, look, if you want to pay more tax, go ahead and pay more tax. There's no rule to say you can't pay more tax.
Oh, no, not me.
No, other people.
Other people.
Yeah, the other people.
Oh, no, those people.
Yeah,
that's
ones. Totally what it's like.
Yeah, and because it's a very convenient argument and a convenient way to go about your existence by justifying your lack of drive to point the finger at others that have what you don't have. It's an easy way out.
Yeah, I stand up for, though, the entrepreneurs, the small business people in Australia because I know what it takes.
Yeah, because you've been there.
Every single day when these guys are running the coffee shop or they've got some factory.
Yep.
Yeah, they're just basically trying to make ends meet. They're trying to provide jobs for other people. They've got a lot of responsibility, a lot of stress. This is a fascinating story. I went and I spoke to this guy one day. And he was from the socialist left of the Labor Party. Okay, he was a staff member.
Sounds like a peach.
He'd come through uni.
Translation, asshole.
Yeah, basically just come through uni and he was like working as a staffer.
Yeah.
And I talked to him about back then it was the Hungry Jack's restaurant, which we still have. And I said, we have this Hungry Jack's restaurant. He said, oh yeah, well I believe that the profits that you make in the store should be divided amongst the people that work in the store. I said, yeah, great, let's do that. But are they also going to share in the losses?
Do they share in the losses?
No, they don't share in the losses.
No.
They only share in the profit.
Yeah, wow.
right? And so this is the conundrum
This is the problem.
that these people have. They're not willing to take on any risk whatsoever. They want you to take on all the risk, the debt, the stress, the everything,
Craziness.
right? And if you lose, well, it's all on you. But if you win and you make more of a profit, you've got to divide that amongst
Shame
all
on
the
you.
employees. So hang on, I'm already paying them, the employees.
I don't think it's an Australian issue, despite I think it's much worse in Australia. I've exposed myself a lot to Americans. And I think they're, in general, from my experience, they're a lot better at seeing the big picture and praising each other, celebrating each other's wins, being there for their friends, their peers, their colleagues in their moments, whether it's in dips in defeat or whether it's in celebration and acknowledgement. They're much better with that in general. Of course, there's always, the outliers, but Australians really struggle with success. We struggle in general with, watching someone that's trying to do something, sticking their nose out, and we love to cut them down. Of course, it's just one of the things that saddens me most about Australia. And I still remember, what's really interesting? This is a fucking true story too, right? And you're going to love this one. So just before COVID, right, I was already at this point as a fitness professional, I was running a team of personal trainers, right? And I'd worked super hard through my early years to start building some skill in terms of business and the acumen needed to start to employ people. And at this point, I had about 13 trainers working for me, and it was a significant amount of profit, which I didn't have to count any more reps. I was managing people, but I already had this vision, well, I need to get online. I've got to get online. There's a few reasons for that, which I won't go into, but I was already putting more and more research and spending more money on mentorship, on coaching, joining different masterminds. And there was this pivotal moment where I was creating content. This is a true fucking story. And there was one hook that I put on this video, which will blow your mind, just before COVID. And it's me in the CBD, and I had a videographer there, but the hook was, what would you do if your gym shut down tomorrow and there was no way for you to earn income? What would you do?
Right before COVID.
Right before COVID, I kid you not.
Wow.
And that was the hook. And I had no insight. I'm not fucking Nostradamus, right? Unless you didn't know. And guess what was in the comments? You stupid fucking idiot. I would just go to another gym. I would just do this. I would just do that. It was just this barrage of hate.
Why though?
Barrage of hate. And I look back at that video, I'm like, you morons. I went on to create a $30 million health company because the gyms did shut down. It's those individuals that have that perspective that will always stay stuck. You would be an absolute moron right now in this moment, 2025, leading into 2026, if you are not paying attention to the opportunities in front of you with humility and recognizing, okay, there are things that I don't know, but because I don't understand them, it doesn't mean they're wrong. It doesn't mean they're not a legitimate opportunity. It doesn't mean I shouldn't be learning, growing, expanding. I think the purpose of, and we're getting deep here, we're getting fucking deep, because I know we were talking before about what's behind Bitcoin. I was asking you that, right? The movement. I think fundamentally that the purpose of humanity is evolution. And so once upon a time, the exchange, if you read the Bitcoin standard, was the Portuguese had a particular currency, the Romans, whatever it is. It's just constant evolution. You cannot fight it. When you understand that, then you adopt it, you move with it, you embrace it. But it's the evolution, not just of a currency, but how we live, how we operate, how we exchange, how we work. We're here on a work day. Now this is our work. What we do is create content, we add value, but it's because we allowed ourselves to recognize that I need to evolve. I need to keep changing. I need to keep growing, expanding, learning, and exposing myself to things that a year ago I didn't understand.
This has been one of the most powerful things, I think, on this journey too. And a lot of people who are in the business space who are now coming into the Bitcoin standard, let's call it, understanding Bitcoin, it's actually exciting.
Absolutely.
Yeah? And you want to learn about it because it's so revolutionary. Like this is an amazing kind of technology. And so, I learn new things all the time. Yeah. Every time I pick up a new book, I'm like, wow, I didn't know about that. That's incredible. And so that's why I think it just keeps you going, right? And so what I did is I structured my life around it because I love it so much. I'm like, I'm going to create a podcast and online community and let's talk about the things that I want to talk about. And which is, of course, what you do, right? You love the whole freedom movement. And so you get to do this as your gig. That's perfect.
It's to empower people, it's to give them the opportunity, which I felt back many years ago, I didn't have. Neither did you, right? You didn't have access to the type of content and information we have today. But what we do with information, that's the difference. There are certain people that will get a little bit of information, for example, then do something with it. And then there are others that will get information and just allow it to be just that, just more noise. And so I love what you said earlier. And I think just to sort of start to wrap this up, where you said, should you understand Bitcoin before you start playing in the game? I was kind of like, true or false. I was trying to see what you were going to say. And I love that you said, well, false, because I mean, all you need to understand is you need to do your due diligence, and you need to, of course, go down that path, and you should be reading, studying, researching, listening to the thought leaders and what's happening. You should understand it as you go. But I think you just need to take action, because what I've personally experienced in my life is that confidence in anything comes from taking action, putting a step in. And we always have to be, I wouldn't say, we have to be cautious. That's just human nature. But we should go based on where the probability is and measure probability.
Yeah, it's an educated step forward. And the thing with just buying into $100 of Bitcoin, for example, that's not going to put your life on the line.
It shouldn't, right? There's people putting more every week into gambling machines, into whatever other stupid addictions they have than it is these kinds of things.
Shane, let me leave, I know you said you want to wrap this up. Let me just leave the people with something to think about as my parting gift. We just mentioned $100.
Yep.
$100 into Bitcoin. Let's say it compounds at the 40%, and let's say we're talking 20 years, and we're going to put in $100 a week.
$100 a week for 20 years.
20 years. And it's going to compound at 40%, which is not even where they think it could go higher, right? So we say 40. $37 million. So you can't tell me that you can't afford just
Fuck it, I'm putting $100.
Now, it's a long time. You can set that up on auto.
But here's the reality, right? What people don't understand about wealth is that, it starts somewhere and it compounds. And the biggest mistake you'll make is because there's this issue with humanity, which is all in, all out. And we see it in health, we see it in wealth, we see it in relationships. If it can't be all in, and that's kind of the idea, then we're usually all out. And so the idea that needs to be smashed first and foremost, which you've done extremely well right there, if this was a sale, that would be perfect, is that the idea is that something is better than nothing. What I've heard in that little moment is that the little something, the $100, the little seed can be something so large purely because you're putting it into the right asset class. You're committed for the long game. You understand the game. You understand where it's going. And so you allow it to do its thing. You don't fight against it. You go with it. You remain open and you allow the law of compound interest to kick in, to do its beautiful thing. And you put just that little bit in the something. Because the challenge is when you reject the something because it's not all of what you've got, you do nothing.
Yeah.
And so the most risky thing anyone can do from my perspective right now is not putting money in. It's not putting money in.
Correct.
It's doing nothing in this moment, in this time. So Bitcoin has had as we discussed it coming on, we joked about it. It's had an adjustment, right? A short-term adjustment. Anyone that I know that's anybody that I pay attention to, and by the way, never take advice from people who have no fucking money on what to do with your money. Like people with money right now are buying Bitcoin. Like, pay attention.
The whales are buying more Bitcoin.
They're buying Bitcoin. Pay attention
right now.
Yeah.
And all the people that have tiny amounts of Bitcoin, they're panicking. Okay. And so you asked me a question in the very beginning, which I didn't actually answer, which is what is the risk? The risk right now is allocating to Bitcoin. Firstly, the risk is having no exposure to Bitcoin. But the second risk is actually buying Bitcoin, not really understanding the asset and how it operates, and then selling at the first sign of a dip or a correction.
Being emotional about it.
That's why you got to have that longer time frame for it. And so the history or the stats are that anyone who's held Bitcoin for at least 4 years, any 4-year period, has not been in the red. Yeah, they're always positive.
So the analogy I was trying to give you, and this is going to be shocking to some of you, like I would never take advice from a fat personal trainer.
Right.
Okay. Pure and simple, whether you like it or not, whether that offends you, I don't care. Because the reality is it's a demonstration. And so if someone has wealth and they're now talking about an asset class, about what they're doing with their money, how they're making it, you pay attention. And it's those individuals that are screaming from the rooftop saying, okay, well, it's too risky, it's going down or whatever. They're the ones without.
It would be different if I was saying to people, I think it's a great idea to move all your super in SMSF.
But Matt, you hadn't done it.
Have you done that?
No, I haven't done it. No, I haven't done it. Yeah, so never take advice from a fat personal trainer actually is the analogy. And also never listen to and take advice on wealth from someone who has actually
not accumulated wealth. In fact, that's something I heard Grant Cardone just talk about this week on his
Good advice,
podcast.
Shane.
Yeah, never take advice from people on business who have never built a business or anything, in other words, that can show evidence, well, I've done this, right? And say, I would never do that. So there's so much out there to consume. Give us one thing then, and of course you've got your YouTube channel, you got your Instagram, people are going to be able to go to you. The links to Matt's socials and his content will be in the show notes. So most certainly go in, spend the time, and do not be an idiot. In other words, go and put in the time. An idiot by definition is just someone who rejects knowledge. You're an idiot by definition, right? And so go and research, or go and spend your time, go and look at what Matt's got out there, and go and be curious enough and open your mind up to the possibility that this could be something worth exploring. And I think the biggest risk that you could face is actually doing nothing, sitting on your hands and allowing this moment to pass you by. But if there was one that people could go and grab as well, something, or where would you direct them?
Look, the most common book that everyone talks about is called The Bitcoin Standard.
Yep.
However, that book is quite technical.
It's technical.
Okay.
It's heavy.
And so there's another book that's out there, which has been around for a few years now, which I think is absolutely brilliant. It's by a gentleman who I've had on my podcast called Brian DeMint, and his book is called Bitcoin Evangelism.
Yep.
And the reason why I love that book, it's easy to read. It's easy to understand the concepts because he talks from a way of the story of his life through his jiu-jitsu training. He's actually in the health space. You would love him.
Yep.
Yeah. He's got these incredible businesses over in California. And so, so Bitcoin Evangelism is what I would direct most people to as their first book to read about Bitcoin.
Mate, it's been an absolute pleasure. And I love going deep into that stuff and getting to know you as well. And I look forward to watching more and more of what you're doing and supporting your journey as well.
Well, I love what you're doing. Shane DaCosta is a legend and is fighting the freedom movement. Love it.
Yeah. Thank you, man. Thanks for being on.
Thanks for having me.
Now that's a wrap for today's episode on the Freedom Formula podcast. I want to give a huge and massive shout out and thank you to Matthew Fraser for sharing his journey from broke to a $70 million Amazon sales business to going all in on Bitcoin and leading one of the fastest growing crypto communities in Australia. Now here's some of the takeaways. Freedom requires sovereignty. Sovereignty requires skills. And skills require the courage to think for yourself, even when the world disagrees. Matthew's story is a reminder that you don't need permission to build wealth. You don't need a perfect plan. You just need to move and take action. If his message hit you today, go follow him on social media. And you can follow him on all platforms. Go to the links in the bio and check out Crypto Collective if you want to understand Bitcoin through a real and a grounded Australian lens. Now, if you're a coach or consultant who knows you're meant to serve, but you are stuck at the starting line and you know that you need help to scale your offer and you want to build a sales system that can scale your team predictably, then this is your moment. Scale Up CEO could be your launchpad for a mission-driven business that creates more impact, a real business that's sustainable. If that sounds like what you're after, then we can help you shape your sales system, build the ecosystem to convert clients predictably. But again, it is not for everyone. Hit the show notes, go to the application link, and submit your application to work with us. I'm Shane DaCosta. Thanks for listening. And remember, freedom isn't found, it's built. One decision, one skill, and one step at a time.